Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Calistoga for the City Council. It is Tuesday, April 21st at 7 p.m. City Manager Spittler, has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. City Clerk Flampson, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Kraus.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Here.
Mayor Canning.
Here. Can you please stand and remove your caps and join me for a salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First and foremost, please mute or turn off your cell phones. That includes those of us up here. We have a packed house, so we're doing our best at temperature control, but whoever's closest to the side door, you are responsible for the breeze, so you can open that if you'd like to. If you are going to speak at the podium this evening, we politely request that you speak into the microphone. We have a very large home audience that this is televised to live. And whenever you turn away, whether it be to the audience or for some other purpose, we get the phone calls of complaints that they can't hear what you're saying. So please remember to do so, and we will remind you on occasion. We did have a closed session meeting prior to this, which is at 6 p.m. and was posted. It was an adjournment into closed session for a conference with real property negotiations under California Brown Code, Government Code 54956.8 regarding a property at 1401 North Oak Street in Calistoga. The agency negotiator representing the city is the city manager, Richard Spittler. The negotiating parties are the Boys and Girls Clubs of St. Helena and Calistoga. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment for potential lease. And Pat Hampton, please pay special attention. There is no reportable action. She's often surprised by that. This city council has strict adherence to the Brown Act, which was enacted to ensure that the public's business is conducted in public. It's not built for speed, but it is built for transparency. As of January of 2012, this city council has adopted the Rosenberg's Rules of Order for Parliamentary Procedure in conducting its meetings. General rules of conduct. Please complete a speaker card for the purpose of conducting the meeting efficiently. Again, requested, not required. Speakers are to address the council from the podium, not to address the audience. Speakers will be given courtesy and respect to the degree that they provide it as well. Applause is discouraged. All it does is delay the meeting. There is no allotment of your time to another speaker, so your 3 minutes are your 3 minutes. We also ask that you appreciate that others may feel as passionately about their position as you feel about yours. Stick to the item on the agenda. If it is an agendized item, if you stray, you will be interrupted. Inaccurate or misleading statements will be corrected. We are all entitled to our own opinion, but we are not entitled to our own set of facts. The council during the meetings will disclose all ex parte contact related to each agenda item. We will tell the public what the council is doing while it's doing it. When the council has acted, we will tell the public what the council has done, and you will witness it as well. 2 quotes. We can disagree without being disagreeable, from Barry Goldwater. And one of my favorites from a former mayor of the city of Santa Monica. While we are on cable TV, those are the cameras, we are not a cable TV show. With that said, I will open oral communication on consent items or non-agendized items. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters on the consent calendar or matters of municipal concern that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, also known as the Brown Act. However, the council cannot consider any issues or take action on any requests during this comment period. Speakers are encouraged to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes, that all speakers have an opportunity to address the council. We will be strictly adhering to the 3-minute rule. I will give 30 seconds notice upon your departure. And I will apologize in advance if you consider me rude in the manner in which I tell you your time is up. But for the benefit of everybody here that would like to address the council, we'll be doing so, and the timer is kept up here. I have 2 oral communication cards that I'll start with, and then if anyone would like to address the council again on consent matters or non-agendized items. First, I have Pam Ingalls under public comment, not an agendized item, correct? Okay, you checked both boxes. No problem. All right, no problem. Clarence Levisi. Clarence, should you so choose, you can share with us your name, which I've already done, and your address, but you are not required to do so.
285 Rosedale Road. Volker Isley had a memorial service a few days ago, and I'd like to read some excerpts from the last comments of the memorial service. In response to growing public concern over the burdens of Napa Valley's increasing commercial success, Napa County supervisors have just formed the Napa County Agricultural Protection Advisory Committee to once again ask the perennial Napa Valley question, how much is too much? As our wineries increasingly become event centers on ag land, and traffic delays impact every resident, community worker, commuting worker, tourist, and farming operation, how much is too much? Before we lose any semblance of quality of life for those who live, farm, and work here, when do we realize we live in a very tiny valley with very limited resources that are being exploited beyond sustainability? How many more projects will be approved that must rely on trucking their water in and trucking their waste out? When is enough enough? In 1968, a courageous Board of Supervisors passed the revolutionary Napa Valley Agricultural Preserve zoning regulations in an attempt to save the land from being paved over like the rich farming lands of Santa Clara and San Jose. For decades, Volker led the battle to save this land while maintaining economic sustainability. He devoted his intellect, his energy, and his own funds to fighting to save the lands and the wilds. Tom May once told me, quote, Volker is the last man standing, but he's not here to lead us this time. Volker once said, I'm not going to be here forever, and if this county is supposed to be preserved, I mean, there have to be other people, obviously. We are those people. The most meaningful tribute we can pay to Volker, the most honor we can give, is to keep up the fight. We must have the courage to say, basta, enough, now, enough. For Volker, for the land, for the wilds, and for future generations. This is Norma Tenfinelli, the president of the Napa County Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Mr. Levisi. Charlotte Williams. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose.
Charlotte Williams, 59 View Road. This is just a brief note from Doug Cook, who couldn't be here tonight, but asked me to say this to you. Thanks you for making the minutes more complete and useful.
Thank Mr. Cook for us. I have no more speaker cards under oral communication, but if there's anyone that would like to address the council on matters on the consent calendar or a non-agendized item, please make yourself known at this time. Not seeing any motion or movement toward the podium, I will close oral communication. I will now seek an adoption for the meeting agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. I have a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Council requests and ideas for discussion. Tonight we'll start with Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Yes, I want to ask the council to adjourn this meeting in honor of Mr. Jaime Rubio. He was a Latino leader in our neighbor city of Santilina. He lost his life suddenly last week, and I just want to let you know that he was a great leader, he was a great father, and he did so much of the community in Santilina. So I just want to adjourn his memory.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Barnes.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Kraus.
I don't have anything either.
Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. I have two items. The first is a packaged brick. This is a placard on the brick that says Napa, South Napa, 8/24/14 at 3:20 a.m. regarding the earthquake. and this was presented by the City of Napa to all of the municipalities and agencies that provided service during their time of need. As many of you know, in that earthquake, Calistoga was very fortunate in that we were spared any damage to speak of. But immediately following an assessment that the City of Calistoga was fine, the city manager had agreed, and we dispatched public works, thank you, public works support in the terms of labor and equipment, as well as fire equipment and fire personnel. So that was a thank you from them to us, and showing that everyone in Napa County helps everybody else out. So that's number one for tonight. And then also I want to make the announcement that we do have some Earth Day activities going on Saturday, April 25th from 9 to noon over at Logvy Park. There'll be an e-waste collection and a confidential record shredding collection as well. There'll be a commercial and shredder being brought to Logvy where they will shred your documents in your presence. So you don't have to throw them out or pay money to have them shredded elsewhere. The shredding is sponsored by West America Bank. The rest of the activities are brought to you by the City of Calistoga Park and Recreation. And again, that is this Saturday, April 25th at Logvy Park from 9 to noon. All right. Moving on to item G, proclamations, presentations, awards. We have none this evening. Item H, consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented unless any council member feels they need to withdraw an item.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kraus, a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
For those of you who haven't been to a city council meeting yet this year, it is now required under state statute that I announce to the public who makes a motion and who seconds. That's why I say their names often. I will confuse them on occasion. Moving on to public hearing, item number 2 on the agenda this evening is consideration of a waiver from undergrounding existing overhead utilities with the Brandstad parcel map pursuant to Calistoga Municipal Code 16.02.080B in consideration of an exception from the sewer connection requirements pursuant to CMC 13.08.140. The property is located at 957 Petrified Forest Road. The Planning Commission adopted the mitigated negative declaration in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, for the subject parcel. The recommended action this evening is to adopt the resolution. Taking us through this item will be Senior Planner Eric Lundquist. Eric, thank you.
Mayor, I need for this item, I need to recuse myself because I run a business right on the property next door.
So you'll be recusing yourself because of a proximity matter. Thank you very much. We'll call you back in when the item is managed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The Planning Commission approved a 2-lot parcel map back in March, conditioning the parcel map to require them to extend the sewer line from the intersection of Foothill Boulevard and Petrified Forest Road, up Petrified Forest Road, across Cyrus Creek, up an adjoining property to this particular property, which is quite some distance. Although the Planning Commission does not have the authority to grant said exception, they did comment on the exception and express their support for this waiver here tonight. There are specific findings that have to be made to support the request for the sewer exception. This particular property does meet those findings. They have done a soils evaluation. The soils are more than adequate to handle the proposed septic systems to support these 2 residential lots. So we are suggesting that the Planning Commission, or excuse me, the City Council also grant this exception. Additionally, the Planning Commission, because they do not have the authority, conditioned the project to underground the existing utilities along Petrified Forest Road. And they are somewhat cumbersome because the Petrified Forest has a sweeping turn there on your way to Santa Rosa. And because of that sweeping turn and the geometrics of the utilities overhead, they crisscross back and forth Petrified Forest Road, making it somewhat cumbersome to have to underground those. Additionally, the road sloughs off down into Cyrus Creek. So the ability to underground or trench adjoining the road is nearly impossible. We find that these are the findings necessary to also grant the undergrounding of utility exception. With that, I'm here to answer any questions should the City Council have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Council members, any question of staff? Is the applicant here? Okay, you're not required to, but if there's anything you'd like to share with us, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll open it up to public comment. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is a public hearing. I will open to public comment. I do not have any speaker cards on this, but if anyone would like to address this matter, if anyone would like to address the fact that if we required the applicant to underground, we would probably have to close Petrified Forest Road for a little while. Is anyone interested in that? I will close the public hearing and bring it back for council comments, questions, or motion.
I just have one question. We are only here to consider the underground waiver, correct?
And the sewer
And the
exception.
And the sewer.
That's
the
correct.
only two things we're talking about, nothing else.
Nothing else.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Eric, I believe I read in here that the overhead wires are going to be underground in the subdivision itself.
That's correct. Yeah. There's an existing line that connects onto an adjoining property, and from that pole, they will go underground to serve their new residents.
So in us considering granting this exception, this is essentially the same thing that we considered previously, where
On Mora.
on Mora, we waived the need to underground the
Yes,
utilities on Mora, but into the building site itself, they have to go under.
that's correct.
So we're not doing anything extra special.
No.
Okay?
Any other questions by council members? All right, at this point, I'll entertain a motion on this matter, should someone choose to make one.
I'll move the resolution as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. I have a second by Councilmember Kraus. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's 4 for you, Kathy. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item. Could somebody please get Councilmember Lopez Ortega? Thank you, Mr. Beck.
She got-
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, consideration of amendment to the downtown commercial and community commercial zoning districts to allow off-site automated teller machines, also known as ATMs. The proposed amendments are exempt from CEQA under section 15061B3. The recommended action this evening is to open public hearing and continue the hearing to May 19th, 2015. Is there Eric?
Nothing more to say. In the interest of the full agenda, we are asking that this item be continued to the 19th.
Thank you.
Specifically, the public hearing be continued to May 19th.
Are council members in agreement to that? All right.
I'd like that by motion.
Yes, absolutely. Would anyone like to make such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Barnes, a second by Councilmember Kraus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. We'll be moving this public hearing to May 19th. Item number 4 of a similar lot, consideration of a resolution to adopt a fee to be paid in lieu of providing affordable housing units within residential projects, per Calistoga Municipal Code Section 17.08D 4A. The recommended action is also to open the public hearing and continue the public hearing to May 19th, 2015. I'll entertain a motion. First, I will open the public hearing on this, and then close the public hearing on this, and then entertain a motion to continue that public hearing on May 19th.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus, a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to general government. Under J, item number 5. Request for direction to the city manager to negotiate a professional services agreement for animal control services to include field and shelter services for the city of Calistoga. The recommended action by motion is to provide direction. Taking us through this item this evening will be City Manager Spittler, but prior to entering, we will make any disclosures, and I will start. I have visited both facilities, Petaluma Animal Services, as well as the Napa County Shelter and Adoption Facility. Anyone else?
I have visited both Petaluma and Napa County, and I have personally met with many of the citizens on either side of this question.
I did not have the opportunity to visit the places because I had family issues, but I did have the opportunity to talk to the residents and listen to their concerns.
Any other disclosures?
I have been stopped in the street. I have never had so much email about any issue before this city council.
You're only required to disclose anything at this point.
But anyway, so that I don't remember everybody that sent them, but you can raise your hands, I suppose, if you sent me an email. And I did talk to several citizens on the street. None of the people in opposition to, I guess you say, from an opposing viewpoint from WCAL, I haven't personally spoke to any of them, but I did get some emails. I did not travel to either of the shelters, however.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Dunsford.
I visited the Napa County shelter yesterday. I visited the Petaluma shelter today. And I also met with neighbors out near the vet clinic. And I've spoken to numerous people on the phone. And I have printed and read every one of your emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And in further disclosure, the visit to the Napa County shelter was by Councilmember Barnes and myself together, but that is not a violation of the Brown Act because there are only two of us and not three of us. And I too did meet with some of the neighbors as well. So with that said, taking us through this item will be City Manager Spittler.
Thank you, Mayor Canning, members of the council. As you indicated, what I seek this evening after you hear my presentation by the agencies that have given us proposals and listening to the public, I'm seeking direction to negotiate a professional services agreement with one of the two entities that have submitted proposals. On March 3rd, I was asked by the council to present the status on animal control services within the city of Calistoga. We have for some times not had either field services or a shelter, primarily due to budget reasons. And the council directed me 2 years ago to send out proposals to find groups or agencies that would provide these services. I did so and got focused on negotiating an agreement with Wine Country Animal Lovers to provide these services. They would have Petaluma Animal Control do the field services, or excuse me, would do the shelter, the field services, and Calistoga Pet Clinic, Dr. Franklin, do the shelter services. However, due to lack of planning permits, I could not bring such a proposal to the City Council. So at the March 3rd council meeting, I did recommend that we go with the alternative, which is Napa County Sheriff's Office for field services and Napa County Shelter to do the shelter services, as they could combine, provide all the services we needed per municipal code. WCAL came to this meeting and asked for a 30-day time extension so they could resolve their issues with lack of a shelter proposal. The council granted, I believe, 49 days and granted that for me, directed me to bring this issue back to you this evening, April 21st. Subsequent to that March 3rd meeting, I sought and received a proposal from Petaluma Animal Services Foundation for shelter services in addition to field services. I also received updated proposals from the Napa County Sheriff's Office for field services and also Napa County Shelter for shelter services. So basically, I had two sets of proposals. WCAL, neither WCAL or the Calistoga Pet Clinic are involved with any of these contracts. So there's two sets of proposals for council consideration this evening. Just to inform the public, there's generally, as I mentioned, there's two basic services that animal control handles. One is field service, which is dealing with lost, injured, sick animals that may be found in public areas. And usually you have someone come out and pick up the animals, and then they take them to a shelter. And at the shelter, the animals are received, given medical treatment as necessary. They're held for certain periods of time. The owners of the pet, if they can be found, are, they're reunited with the owners, and basically they're held until adopted. In some cases, euthanasia is required because of medical reasons or behavioral problems. In all cases, the Napa County Sheriff's Office has a responsibility to address animal bites and rabies issues within the city. That's irrespective of these contracts. That's an ongoing function they have. After reviewing the proposals, the two sets of proposals, I'm satisfied that both entities can provide professional animal control services within the needs of our municipal code and accepted practices. I've checked references, I've visited both shelters, met with staff, and in your staff report is sort of a breakdown of the various services that each group would provide. And I feel that both have put together solid proposals to provide both the field and the animal shelter services. There's been a lot of conversation and newspaper articles, internet exchanges dealing with the issue of kill, no-kill shelters. I believe this term is inflammatory and non-productive. The term of industry is live release rate, and from the information I have, the Napa shelter has a live release rate of 94% for dogs, 66% for cats. Petaluma Animal Services Foundation has a live release rate for both dogs and cats of 99.3%. And there's representatives of each of these groups here this evening should the council have questions after my presentation. I believe each shelter is operated to promote adoption as the foremost purpose, after the primary objective, of course, is getting a pet back to their rightful owner. Both shelters also provide or undertake euthanasia as a last resort to deal with, as I said before, medical issues that can't be resolved, as well as behavior problems. Relative emphasis on adoption versus euthanasia is debatable, but it is clear that both shelters are operated within accepted practices in terms of legal requirements, as well as compassionate care of animals. Each shelter has a caring staff, active use of volunteers, and a clear emphasis as adoption is the primary objective. There's also two additional subjects that should be addressed in in these proposals. One is shelter location and cost of service. In terms of shelter location, the Napa County shelter is located on Hartle Street within the city of Napa off Imola. And a Google search indicates that it's about a 28-mile driving distance from Calistoga, about 40 minutes driving time. This is under ideal conditions. Petaluma shelter, this is a picture of the county shelter here. The Petaluma shelter is located at 840 Hopper Street in Petaluma at the Public Works Corporation Yard. In terms of distance, it's about 34 miles and about 46 minutes. So it's roughly 6 minutes longer driving time under ideal conditions. The Obviously, the Napa shelter is closer and more convenient. The Petaluma shelter's a bit out of the way in an industrial area. The second issue is the cost of service provision. When we enter into professional services agreement, the foremost objective is to get the best professional to undertake the work, that they're competent, they do the job in a timely manner. But of course, a municipality must look at the cost of providing service. And you look at field service, the Napa County Sheriff's Office would have an annual cost of just over $20,000. This would be a one-year basis. I don't think they have good numbers on the number of animals that they would have to pick up in a year, and they would, after they get better data, they would renegotiate after the first year. The Petaluma Foundation has a fixed cost of $15,400 per year. This is for the first 3 years. Cost of shelter, Napa County Shelter has a formula with, they have shelter services for all the other cities in an unincorporated county. In Napa County, the only exception is City of St. Helena, which dropped service last year for financial reasons. And basically, they basically have revenues come in from all these entities and expenses, and they share those expenses on a per capita or population-based formula. They also have an annual surcharge for a future capital expense for the shelter. This would be 2% the first year of the contract, 2% of the base charge, 2.5% the second year, and 3% the third year, and all subsequent years of the agreement. Most of these proposals are thinking in terms of 3-year time periods. But they have a phase-in of these base costs. The first year would be $12,523, second year $24,500, and third year $36,540, and that's the full base charge, 100%. So this is a cost over a 3-year time period of about $73,000. The Petaluma Animal Foundation would have an annual charge of $34,000 for each of the 3 years, so a total cost of $102,000. So when you combine the field and shelter, because you basically have Napa Sheriff, Napa Shelter, and then Petaluma Animal doing both field services and shelter, for the first 3 years, the Napa County proposal would be about $135,000, and then Petaluma Animal would be about $148,000 the first 3 years of service. If you look at the County of Napa, particularly the shelter, on the third year it gets up to full cost, and you could see under present assumptions going to year 4 that, well, actually starting in year 3, Petaluma starts to be a lesser cost than the county. So in conclusion, from looking at these proposals, I'm convinced both entities are highly qualified to undertake animal control services within the city of Calistoga. Having Napa County undertake field and shelter services would be logical in the sense that our police department works closely with them, and the shelter provides easier access for local residents. As I mentioned, the cost of the Napa County proposal in year 3 starts getting higher than Petaluma, and under present assumptions, probably going forward it'd be less expensive. And after you receive public comment, my request is you give me direction on which group or entities to negotiate a professional services agreement. After I do that, I will bring it back to the council at public meeting for formal adoption. There'd be 2 agreements, one with the shelter and one with field services. That concludes my presentations, and in your packet, there are public comments that we received. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Spittler. So for clarification of what tonight's agenda item is in front of the council, it is discussion on and direction given to field services and sheltering for animal control services for the City of Calistoga involving the two entities whose contracts or proposals were presented to us. That's Napa County and that's Petaluma Animal Services. There are no other entities or organizations that the city is currently considering in this discussion for contracts or agreements. With that said, we have the benefit this evening of having representatives from the two organizations. If they could come up to the podium, that would be great. We have from the director of the Napa County Shelter, Kristen Loomer. And we have from Animal Control Services for the county, the Undersheriff Gene Donaldson. Approaching now. And then from Petaluma Animal Services, we have Jeff Charter. So we'll start with Napa County. Is this an accurate representation of the proposal which you presented to the City of Calistoga as presented by the city manager? Thank you very much. Mr. Charter, is this an accurate representation of the proposal you've presented to the City of Calistoga as presented by the city manager?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, I'll bring it to you for discussion. We do have these folks here for any clarifications, questions, etc. For the benefit of those in the audience, the council will discuss, debate, and then at some point when we feel comfortable, we'll open it for public discussion. We will then close public discussion, bring it back for further discussion and direction at that point. All right? You guys aren't required to stand. If you can, Eric can give up his chair. Thank you very much. There you are. And as well with you guys, if a question's asked that you're able to answer, if you could speak into the mic, make sure the little green light's on so the folks at home can hear. And again, the city did invite these two organizations to present, so we will give them our traditional Calistoga welcome. So thank you very much for being here and taking time to be with us. Council members, I will now open this for questions of staff or of the organizations who presented their proposals.
Would it be appropriate to have each of the applicants talk a little bit first before we enter into our discussions?
Absolutely. We'll start with Napa County, since alphabetically you start. Green light, there you go.
There we go. Honorable Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to present on our services. The Napa County Animal Shelter and Adoption Center is a safe haven for pets and a wonderful place to find your new family member. The numbers speak for themselves. In 2014, we had 1,066 adoptions, and 616 animals were reunited with their owners through our efforts. It is clear that the citizens of Napa County know where to go and to locate their family pets. We are comprised of a staff of dedicated, caring, and compassionate professionals who uphold the highest standards of care for the 2,700 plus animals that come through our open doors each year. We celebrate our partnerships, of which there are many, each of whom provides us with resources to improve the lives of animals in our shelter. For example, Pet Food Express has opened their doors and their store to create a cat adoption center for us. We've had 267 cats adopted from their facility just in the last 2 years. They've also provided us with $26,000 in donations over that same amount of time. Napa Humane is our partner in spay-neuter. They provide low-cost spay-neuter to all citizens of Napa County, as well as all the animals prior to adoption at our facility. They offer shelter support services, providing us with much-needed items that we cannot afford on our budget alone. They also offer a mobile adoption unit to get the animals out to the public at farmers markets, birthday events, etc. We Care Animal Rescue in St. Helena is one of our adoption partners, as well as the newly formed Jameson Rescue Ranch and the Marin Humane Society. We've transferred animals to all of those entities for adoption. The Gasser Foundation is also an important note. They are a major benefactor to the shelter, providing us with signage on our building, and also they are in plans to establish new landscaping and beautification efforts for the shelter. We have several integral programs for our shelter operation, including our volunteer services program, spay-neuter and feral cat voucher program, and our foster program. Our volunteer program is comprised of over 75 active volunteers who give their time to the shelter They are dog walkers, cat socializers, foster parents, office help, professional animal photography and biography writing, graphic design, and newsletter design. Total hours contributed are over 3,400 a year, and that's an equivalent salary of nearly $62,000. Our spay, neuter, and feral cat voucher program utilizes a small portion of our dog licenses to reduce the pet overpopulation in Napa County. And we provide spay, neuter vouchers to those who cannot afford it. We also provide vouchers for citizens who are willing to return a feral cat to the area in which it was found. And in the last 2 years, we have issued 404 spay neuter vouchers and 460 feral cat vouchers. Both programs drastically reduce the number of animals coming into the shelter and the number of feral cats requiring euthanasia. Our foster program has grown dramatically over the last several years, mainly comprised of kittens and puppies who are too young to be spayed and neutered, but also includes adult animals who need socialization or are recovering from a medical condition. 458 animals have gone through this program over the last 2 years. There's been much discussion around statistics and specifically the percentage of our live release rate. As a municipal shelter, we far exceed, and in fact double, national averages with our live release rates. We strive to operate at manageable capacity and can attest that we have no time limits for animals that are available for adoption in our system. As an open admission shelter, who must accept all animals from within its jurisdiction of operation, there are on occasion animals who are not suitable for adoption. That's due to a behavior issue that cannot be rehabilitated or an irremediable medical issue. We are compassionate toward all our animals and treat them as individuals, knowing that the kennel is a hard place to be for most. We work with shy and scared animals, placing them in foster care, or spending time bringing them out of their shell. We rehabilitate the sick and injured, spending over $50,000 per year on specialized veterinary care, such as heartworm treatment, generalized skin conditions, ringworm, broken limbs, severe dental disease, tumor removal, and even skin cancer treatment. We celebrate those successes, and there are many. Given that we cannot pick and choose which animals come through our doors, we do find ourselves caring for untreatably ill or aggressive, dangerous dogs and cats. From a public health and a humane perspective, those animals are not and should not be available for adoption. We cannot refuse admission to feral cats from those individuals who will not take part in our voucher program. And consequently, when we cannot place them as barn cats, which we do try, they make up more than half of our total cats that are euthanized. Another third of those cats that have irremediable medical conditions make up that last percentage, and that other percentage that is there, 10%, are behavior problems that we cannot rehabilitate. As City Manager Spittler stated, euthanasia is the very last resort for the animals in our shelter, and only after all resources have been exhausted. We fully utilize our programs and look to our adoption partners for placement of tough cases. In 2014, 97 animals were placed with 15 different adoption partners. In closing, the true measures of a well-run animal shelter are in its ability to display high standards of care while demonstrating high functionality in all areas of operation. At the Napa County Animal Shelter, we are proud to have minimal disease transmission in our population, a strong dedication to kennel enrichment, a no stone left unturned approach to reuniting lost pets, and all adoptable animals finding forever homes. The Napa County Animal Shelter, its officers, staff, and volunteers remain committed to the animals of Napa County. We will continue to provide resources for the promotion of animal welfare and strive to always be a safe haven for those animals in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Under Sheriff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gene Donaldson. I'm the Napa County Undersheriff. Happy to be here tonight, and it's good to see that you have such an interested audience. It's great to see people interested in what's happening in their city. In 1997, the Sheriff's Office took over animal control services from the Environmental Health Management Department in our county. And since then, I think we've worked hard to professionalize our Animal Services Bureau We currently have 5 animal services officers. They are not deputy sheriffs, but they are supervised by one of our sergeants. And they do all our field service work. And one of our goals is really one of our main goals is to educate pet owners about how to be a responsible pet owner, especially when we have animals that do occasionally get out. And we work to reunite those animals with their owners and prevent that from happening again. And so I think that our guys do an excellent job of that. We work very closely with the animal shelter and the local veterinarians when we have animals that are sick or injured. We do our best to get them the best care possible.
Thank you very much. Mr. Charter, you are allotted equal time should you need it. You have 8.5 minutes. Trust me, I'd be corrected if I didn't allow it.
Thank
Green light. There you go.
All right.
Actually, if you can use his mic. There you
Oh, now it's on. Thank you. My name is Jeff Charter. I'm the Executive Director of Petaluma Animal Services Foundation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I want to say that we started in 2012 as a nonprofit animal shelter. Prior to that, we were a government-run shelter as well, and then we're all aware of what happened in 2008 and budget cuts and those kind of things, and that sort of was the genesis of how we became a nonprofit animal shelter. And what we learned through that process is that by shedding some of the bureaucratic weight of being in the government system allowed us to be a little more free to provide a lot of things that weren't necessarily provided to the animals prior to. And one thing I do want to clear up is that we are an open admission shelter, so we take everything that hits our front door, just like Napa County or any other open admission shelter that you hear about. So we don't turn animals away. Any animal that comes to us from our jurisdiction, we accept it. We strive very, very hard, and it is our goal to provide the best opportunity for a live release for every animal that comes to our shelter. And what that means is that if they need medical care, they get it. If they need behavioral training, they get it. We have one of only 8 certified canine behaviorists in the state of California that is full-time employed at our animal shelter. We have 2 full-time dog trainers that provide the opportunity for our dogs to get everything that they need to overcome that. Just like Napa County or any other open admission shelter, we do run into those situations where our dog trainers say this one's just not safe, and we do euthanize animals for that. Same comes with cats. So there's certain times where you just can't place a cat, and we do euthanize for those reasons. However, you can tell, like we heard earlier, the numbers do speak for themselves. We're at 99.3% live release. I believe that's the best way to get a read on what an animal shelter is doing as far as success. So how many walk in alive and how many walk out alive without too many smoke screens. We're a very compassionate organization. We use volunteers, foster care, all the things that that the animals need to find their way back out alive. I believe that we can provide the highest level of service for the city of Calistoga for the pets and give them everything they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charter. Council members, questions?
I have a hopefully a quick question. I noticed that all of the services under animal control services, I'm speaking not shelter services, reference domestic animals. And in this community, as well as I'm sure other locations throughout this county and Sonoma County, particularly this time of the year, you get a lot of deer hit by cars, and sometimes they're dead and sometimes they're suffering. So since this contract calls for domestic animals, how would we be handling, let's say, a deer hit by a car on Foothill Boulevard that's injured? I guess we'll start with Napa County, and you can tell us whether you would be responding to that kind of an incident.
Well, per our contract, typically no, we wouldn't. everything's a case-by-case basis. Usually when we, to be frank with you, usually when there's a deer that's severely injured on the highway, a law enforcement officer will come and dispatch the deer to put it out of its pain. But there are times where we have assisted, for example, if a deer was trapped in a fence, that kind of call, where our animal service officers can be of aid, then we would respond to those types of incidents. But it's a case-by-case basis.
Mr. Charter.
That same would hold true for us. The RFP that was put out was specifically for domestic pets.
Domestic, okay. But you would make an effort
If
and
now we would consider a call from Calistoga Police Department for an injured deer in the roadway to be an emergency call, and we would respond and dispatch that animal.
Any other questions?
I have a couple of
Vice Mayor
questions.
Dunsford.
For Petaluma, Mr. Charter, how many how do you call them, field officers, or what do you?
Animal control officers.
Okay, how many do you have working for you?
3.
And are they 24/7?
They work 8-hour days, and then we're on call so at least one officer is on call each night for the hours that we're not on duty.
Okay. And Napa, you mentioned you had 5?
That's correct, and one's on call. Take turns being on call.
Okay.
24/7.
Another question for Mr. Charter. I enjoyed my visit out there today. I came unannounced, and the young gentleman working the desk was very friendly, showed me around. You have a very nice facility. He was mentioning, I was asking him about Cloverdale and Healdsburg, and he brought up, he mentioned that he used the term stray holds, that you prefer that the animal stay in the community for about a week before you would intake the animal. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Not sure exactly what he's referring to. They would come to the shelter. There's a 72-hour hold is what the state law is. We have, that is when portions of Hayden's Law was repealed, they went back to a 72-hour hold. We have continued with the 7 and 10-day hold. So that's what they do. They come to the shelter and they'll stay there until their stray time is up to allow for an owner to find them.
So if there's a stray dog found in Cloverdale or Healdsburg, they're immediately brought to your shelter?
Yeah. I think what you may have been talking about is owner surrenders. Sometimes owner surrenders will delay at their own decision.
The commentary I was getting was that if the pet is left in the community for a short period of time, there's a better chance of the owner finding his pet if he's left at a stray hold.
No, the stray hold happens at the shelter.
Okay. I must have misunderstood.
Other questions? Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Yes. So how you will, as for the Petaluma shelter, how you will respond to an emergency call? You will work together with the police department and to the sheriff department as well? Or?
Well, it would most likely be the Calistoga Police Department. So emergency calls typically come into the police department. They would dispatch one of our officers, whoever was either on call or on duty that day.
And for example, if you had an injured animal or pet, you will take it straight to your place, or you will shelter somewhere else. You can specify.
No, it would go to Petaluma Animal Shelter. So any call that we respond to, any animal that is impounded incident to that call would go back to the Petaluma Animal Shelter, assuming we can't find the owner on scene.
Councilmember Kraus.
Go ahead, Gary.
I have kind of a follow-up question. Napa County has 5 animal control officers. You have 3. And I am wondering, because of that, how thin are you going to be spread if you're also serving Calistoga? Perhaps you don't cover as much territory as Napa County does, but I'm just curious as to how population versus number of animal control officers works out with.
Sure. Based on the information that I've been able to collect both from the police department and through Wine Country Animal Lovers. I don't anticipate the call volume being extraordinary. We do have only 3 officers. We also only have a 13 square mile area to cover. So we're never too far away.
Okay. Whereas the county is covering county. Okay. The other thing is we have very few, this would be for, I guess, both entities. We have very few rules and regulations in the city regarding animals. That would you have a model ordinance that you would be able to bring to us at some point to make recommendations on handling aggressive animals, for instance? That was kind of the genesis of what got us off the dime here, is we had a bad incident here where a dog was killed by another dog. And I don't know is that we have any ordinance in the city or law in the city that specifically addresses how we're going to handle that kind of a dog. So do you have those kinds of model ordinances available for us to adopt, or would we just be making this up as we go along?
Well, I know that Napa County does have a vicious dog ordinance that you could adopt, and there are other cities as well that I'm sure that we could assist you with getting the ordinance that you think would work in your city.
Yes, that we in Petaluma and in most places, so you know, there's already a food and ag code that's on the books in the state of California, and typically in almost every jurisdiction, that food and ag code is adopted into the local ordinance, almost word for word.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnes.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Like Councilman Kraus and Councilman Dunsford, and probably Mayor Canning, and Councilman Lopez, I have received 59 emails, texts, letters, phone calls, and requests for meetings from concerned citizens. I have never seen my 2.5 years on this council and residency in this town for almost 20 years, such an outpouring over an issue. And I want to thank each and every one of you that are here tonight, that are watching at home, and that took the time to write, to call. I've met with a lot of the citizens. I've spoken to many people over the phone, and I really, really applaud your civic input. There's been a huge amount of rhetoric, if for a better word, about this issue, but I think it all boils down to what is best for the animals and who serves that interest best. I've met with both of the directors of each of these, spent 45 minutes approximately with each one-on-one, although Chris was in the room at one time. And they are, believe both organizations truly are qualified to represent Calistoga for this. I know Napa had some problems in the past, and there's been a number of a 20%, now we'll use the term kill rate. In the past, it's been referenced in many emails, and I think that is in the past. The current director has been there, she told me, 3.5 years, and came from the Marin Humane Society, and obviously has turned the Napa County shelter around, and for that I applaud you. But I think the primary interest is the animals. How many walk in and how many walk out, and how are they treated during the entire experience of getting there, being treated while they're there, and adopted out. I think everyone in this room would agree that that's what we're really talking about. And in doing the research, and this is a question for Napa, I pulled up the Napa County Code of Ordinances. And there's a section in here that really disturbs me. It says, impounded animals, notice to owners, disposition. I won't read it all because it's rather long, but I'll break it down. There are three sections to it, and I'd like you to comment on it. It starts out, the animal control officer, I guess that would be you, and the animal shelter shall observe the following rules in disposing of impounded dogs or cats. Goes through how they pick them up. They're impounded for a period Let me see. Control officer or animal shelter can reasonably be expected to be positively identified. Animals shall continue to be impounded for a period of 6 days. While all reasonable steps necessary to notify the owner of the impoundment are taken. If the owner or representative of the owner is successfully notified, the animal shall continue to be impounded for a period not more than 4 days from the date of notification. If at the end of the 4-day period, which now is a total of 10 days, if at the end of the 4-day period the owner has not redeemed the animal, it shall be sold or otherwise disposed of or destroyed forthwith. Now that's a shall. Second one is the same set of circumstances, except you can't find the owner. And that is for be impounded for a period of not more than 4 days, or a cat for a period not more than 3 days. At the end of such period, that the animal has not been redeemed. Now this says it may be sold or otherwise disposed of or destroyed forthwith. Not shall, but may. And then the final one, which is, I find very disturbing. An impounded dog or cat, which in the opinion of the animal control officer, veterinarian, or the animal shelter, is sick, injured, feral, or under the age of 1 month, may be destroyed without complying with any of the above provisions. So you get a 1-month-old puppy, you have the option of destroying them. Now, I don't believe you do, and I don't believe it's your philosophy, and I don't believe that that's what Napa County is about. But this is your ordinance, and I don't know who your boss is. I don't know the chain of command. I don't know how this works. Whoever it is probably very happy with your performance. He should be, or she should be. But that could change tomorrow, and you could get a boss that says, we are going to enforce this ordinance. First words in here are shall. That means you will euthanize these animals. Can you please tell me what this means?
Just as a frame of reference, is there a date cited on that ordinance or charter?
I took it off the internet today.
When was
Ordinance 1305, Part 1, date 2008.
2008? Okay, thank you.
So yes,
I hate to put you on the spot like this, but this really
just
upset
fine.
me.
It brings to light that there is much outdated language that is pervasive in many of the ordinances, not just that one. And I mean, a lot of that language does go back to 70s, is when a lot of that was initially drafted, and just has not been updated. Our policies and operating procedures are far from the language that is in that ordinance. We do have a 6-day and 10-day holding period, 6 days for animals without ID, 10 days for animals with ID, and we often hold far longer than that whenever that individual animal is deemed necessary to hold longer than that. It's a matter of, yes, addressing on the Board of Supervisors level to get that language changed, and we will definitely look into that. But there is no 1-month-old puppy that is euthanized, as you're correct in that.
You'd have a lynching in this room if you admitted to that.
Not just in this room.
Yes.
We are quite familiar as a city with outdated ordinances as well.
Yes,
so we have our fair share.
I'm not throwing stones, but it did bother me, and I wanted to ask the question in a public forum. And I would like to ask the same question of Mr. Charter. And now I know you operate under an entirely different set of parameters. You know, it's two different operating systems, government and nonprofit. Could you address
certainly.
this?
Yeah, it does bring to light one of the main differences between our organization and the government organization, in that in the government organization, the leadership changes. In Napa County, I'm told now, and have been told before, has great leadership at the moment. But those things change, where in our organization, from the very top to the bottom, the only motivation, the only interest is in the animals we serve and in our customers. We don't compete for budget dollars with police officers, for public works. We don't compete with any of that. Our animals cannot compete for that. We learned through the process of competing for those dollars and with the city of Petaluma that you were going to lose each and every time as an animal agency. That's what motivated the move. So we moved away from that to an organization that from the top to the bottom, whether I stay or I leave, the animal's well-being is first and foremost in every decision. So every animal that comes in, I'll say it again, gets everything they need to get back out alive.
We all, as a community and as various entities, Napa County, Calistoga, Petaluma, went through some extremely hard times during the 2008, 2010, 11 period. That's why we didn't have animal shelter contracts. We couldn't afford them. We had to cancel them. That's why you are where you are, because Petaluma couldn't afford theirs. Changed to a nonprofit. Thank you very much, both of you.
I have one last question for Petaluma. Can you mention how you get your the money that you use? How mention some of the organizations that support your shelter and stuff.
We have a contract with the city of Petaluma. We have a contract with the city of Healdsburg, contract with the city of Cloverdale. So that's part of the money, and essentially the government contracts provide for the infrastructure or the salaries, those types of things. And then we create revenue through adoptions, redemptions, dog licensing, those kind of things. And then we fundraise. Yeah.
Following up on that question, understanding that your major contracts are with government organizations, Petaluma being one, what percentage of your total operating budget is as a result of revenues collected from municipalities to provide animal service?
About 44%.
The rest is private.
Revenue generated and
revenue.
grants, fundraising. Yeah.
For Napa, I was impressed with the visit and the tour, and you had indicated, especially in the last 3 years, you've received a significant amount of support and donations and contributions. What level of support would you say on a percentage basis is as a result of donations? I know the rest is clearly from municipalities and government agencies of the county.
Yeah, donations make up anywhere from 5 to 8% of our total revenues. But that has increased from a paltry 2 to 3%.
Thank you. My question, anyone else? Okay, my question is going to be about response times. And there's an advantage and a disadvantage to the fact that there's history with Napa County Services because you've been around for a significant period of time. And I do understand and appreciate and applaud the work that you guys have done, especially in the last 3.5 years in the conversion of prior management. So that's certainly been noted throughout the county and throughout your customers. Advantage and disadvantage on your side and Petaluma is we don't have a history with you. You're an organization that's been in existence in your current state for 3 years, roughly the same amount of time that there was a transition in Napa. Both of you in your applications have agreed or suggested that your response time would be 60 minutes or less. So I'll start with Napa, understanding we have, and a lot of the emails and letters we received were, stories, anecdotal stories about what happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe even a couple of years ago. If you could just give us some of the changes that may have occurred in the last 3 years where we can feel comfortable about your improved response time.
Well, I don't think Calistoga is contracted with Animal Services.
So prior
Very
to
long
that,
time.
we had you for prior to 2008, I believe, right?
I don't.
Way before that.
No,
Okay.
I think it was in the 90s.
I can't,
Okay.
I've been here for 16
So-
years and I don't remember ever having.
And I started Animal Services when I was the first supervisor of Animal Services for a contract with Calistoga.
Okay, but you have been providing
But-
services up in
We do
Calistoga in the
we do
county.
respond for rabid animals and those types of cases, dog bites, and we believe we can respond within an hour. But like any response, the caveat is you have to prioritize calls. There's traffic issues that are going to affect both our agencies. But I think it's reasonable for us to respond in an hour.
So understanding you also provide all the animal services in the unincorporated part of Calistoga, correct?
That's
so
correct.
there have been improvements in the last several years in that response time? Yes, no?
You know, I couldn't speak to that because
Okay.
I'm not aware of
Mr. Charter, confidence in your ability to be here in 60 minutes or less, barring traffic.
I'm very confident in that. Yeah, I've personally made that trip 10 times since we started this process, just to see it at different times of the day, and I've never been over 50 minutes. So I'm pretty confident in that. I agree with Mr. Donaldson. You know, our officers don't run code, so you know, you get behind an accident or something on the freeway, you might run into that problem.
Okay. And how long have you been contracted with Cloverdale and Healdsburg, respectively?
About a year for both organizations. Okay. Next month will be a year.
Any other questions?
In that same vein, Mr. Charter, I went down to visit your facility last Friday. I specifically picked Friday because Friday afternoon up here during tourist time can be a little iffy. I left Calistoga at 1:45 and arrived at your shelter at 2:30, exactly 45 minutes, and it's right around 40 miles, something like that. And when Chris and I went down, we had to make a stop in Yountville, but factoring them on the freeway, off the freeway, and into Yountville and out, it was about exactly the same time to the Napa shelter, but about 5 or 6 miles less in driving, or in distance, but the same driving time. So I don't think that it is a big deal one way or another.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, council members?
Yeah, just clarification on the total numbers of, I don't know what the terminology is intakes or number of animals you receive on an annual basis, each of you? Napa?
Last year, we received 2,776 animals.
Okay.
1,640.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, council? Okay, I'll open this up to the public. I do have 2 speaker cards, and then if anyone wishes to address the item after that, please let me know. The way we'll handle this is if you have multiple questions, whether they need to be addressed by council or by the representatives from the organizations, ask all of the questions and we'll answer them when you are finished. We will not be doing question, answer, because that will put you well past your. With that said, the first speaker card I have on this topic is Pam Ingalls. Should you choose to share with us your name and address, please do so.
Good evening. I'm Pam Ingalls. I'm president of Wine Country Animal Lovers. My address is 1823 Foothill Boulevard. Appreciate the time to allow me to address this issue. I'm going to read. I am here before you for one purpose, and that is to encourage you to award the Animal Services contract to Petaluma Animal Services for the protection of our animals. I'd like to start out by addressing a couple of statements in the staff report. Staff stated that the use of the phrase no kill and kill are unproductive and inflammatory. In fact, these phrases have precise definitions that are generally accepted in the animal welfare world and are the standard by which all shelters are evaluated. Unfortunately, the phrases also frequently describe the difference between government-run shelters and animal welfare nonprofits and are at the heart of this issue and why we are here tonight. No-kill shelters like Petaluma Animal Services operate on the premise that all animals, with the exception of those that are dangerous or medically untreatable, deserve to live. Kill shelters like Napa County decide whether they believe an animal is adoptable, with the result being that if an animal is old, unattractive, physically challenged, or the wrong breed, it may, as a method of population control, be killed. No-kill shelters are defined as those with a live release rate of 97% or greater. So we've heard tonight that Petaluma is at 99% and Napa County is at 94 for dogs and 66 for cats, so they clearly don't qualify as a no-kill shelter. One recent example of how no-kill works in the real world involved a gentleman whose mother, living in Calistoga, passed away and left behind her beloved senior dog, Holly, who had a large benign tumor. Because he lived out of the country, the son was unable to keep Holly. He called the Napa shelter and was told on the phone that if the dog was brought there, it would be euthanized and never placed for adoption. WCAL took Holly and the same day placed her in a foster home where she was lovingly cared for. Dr. Franklin surgically removed her tumor. Holly was ultimately adopted and is thriving today. I would ask you and those in this room, if your own pet went missing, which organization would you want to pick it up? Perhaps you'd been out of town and the stray hold period had passed. Would you mind driving the additional 6 minutes to Petaluma Animal Services to retrieve your animal knowing its safety was assured until you got there? The issue tonight
30 seconds.
The issue before you tonight is not about WCAL, Petaluma Animal Services, or the county shelter. It is about protecting the lives of all animals, not just the readily adoptable ones. We are asking you to teach our youth that all life has value and that we as Calistogans protect that. We are asking, with your decision, to thank Dr. Franklin for all he has done out of his own pocket over the years for animals in Calistoga. We are asking you to choose the alternative that will carry on a no-kill legacy in our community. We are asking you to award the contract to Petaluma Animal Services. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Monica Stevens. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose.
Good evening, Monica Stevens, Executive Director, Jameson Animal Rescue Ranch of Napa Valley. Address is 1224 Adams Street, St. Helena. I come unscripted tonight. I was very interested to hear what everyone had to say. I've done a lot of research and reading on tonight's topic. And I come with a request and a message. It's to add to what I think everyone in this community wants, and that's to be recognized as no-kill. To that point, our rescue ranch is no-kill. That is our mission, and that is what we will uphold. And I come here tonight asking everyone, our community, to get involved. Those that say that they support no-kill, we need your help. We need help with foster homes. We need help helping the shelter with those animals that just need a little more time and need a special place to stay. This Napa County, we're very proud of our wine industry and everything else we have. We should work as an efforted community to bring down our kill rate. I stand before you tonight raising my hand with our efforts and with the efforts of other rescues here and our work on with the Napa shelter. We're ready to do that. So whatever the decision is, I hope it's the right one. But the bottom line is we need to bring down kill rate. And Jameson Animal Rescue Ranch, WCAL, We Care, Napa Humane, we're all ready to do that, but we need the community's help. And I think, above all, that is the major issue. We want our animals treated fairly. We need resources to help our shelter do that. I congratulate Petaluma on their excellent rate. It is not easy to have that low kill rate. It's exceptional. And I hope that our shelter, we can help our shelter achieve that rate soon.
Thank you very much. I have no further speaker cards on this, so I will, anyone would like to address the council, please share with us your name and address. And be warned, you have 3 minutes, Mr. Levisi.
Hopefully less. Clarence Levisi, 285 Rosedale Road. First, my wife and I lived in Petaluma for 20 years. My wife volunteered for 4 to 6 years at the Petaluma facility. And from that description and discussions over the years, I can say that it is a superior facility and run superiorly. Secondly, I had an interesting experience last year or the year before out on the farm with a non-desirable creature. I can't remember exactly how, but Bill was working there, did not wish to kill it. So he started phoning, and I'm not exactly sure how it ended up, but he ended up getting in contact with the Petaluma area. I'm not sure whether it was this, I think it was this facility, and they sent somebody to pick it up. And they were there in 30 minutes. How he made that Volkswagen move that fast, I don't know. But he did, and did a great job, quick, efficient, really expertise. And so the timing, I think, can speak to one experience that no problem. The creature was a rattlesnake.
We have a few of
Took
those.
it and had a place for it.
Mr. Levisi, you said you had the opportunity to work with and visit the Petaluma shelter. Have you had enough?
I did.
Your wife did. Okay. Got it. Well, I can vouch for one of you. I was simply going to ask if you had the chance to visit the Napa facilities. Okay. Fair enough. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose. And yes, I get tired of saying that, but I'm required to.
Scott Atkinson, 2103 Oat Hill Court, Calistoga. I'm also a board member for Wine Country Animal Lovers. Just 2 points kind of out of the staff report. First, anyone that would not drive an extra 5 miles to save the life of an animal probably should. The second point would be the city of Calistoga, like all other agencies or many other agencies, contracts with outside agencies outside of their counties, outside vendors all the time. It's just not that hard. So I'd like to see that removed as far as a concern. And we're just making requests that you choose the Petaluma Services contract. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that would like to address the council on this matter? Yes, please. It's a great group. You're raising hands. Usually people are rushing up there and throwing elbows. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose.
Hi, I'm Teresa Butler. I am Dr. Butler's widow, and I'm glad to hear Napa County has changed their policies. Well, thank you very much. I am concerned, and I'm just filling you in the history. And as I was a pet, as I owned Calistoga Pet Clinic with my husband, and our experience was very difficult to get the county to come up and take care of injured dogs and cats and other animals. And we had to provide year after year the care for all those creatures. And I know, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Dr. Franklin has inherited the same issue. So I am so glad to hear that all of you are working on this at this point. And I really hope that we can continue to do our best to save as many animals as possible. And I am also fearful that if something changes financially, that maybe we would end up with Napa County going back to the past and not caring for the animals and not coming for calls. So I personally, as a resident and native of the Napa Valley, and also as somebody who owned a vet clinic, I really hope you choose Petaluma. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on this topic? All right. Yes. How are you? Please share with us your name and address should you so choose.
Kristen Casey, 1132 Denise Drive. I'm the, good evening. Thank you for thinking about all the animals. I'm the director of a local nonprofit, Calistoga Cat Action Team, and it's been our mission since 1997 to spay and neuter all stray and feral and now even pet cats in the Calistoga area. And the entire time, one of the entities that's worked very closely with us has been Dr. Franklin at wonderful rates, and most recently, WCAL has helped when we've had animals that are potentially adoptable. I'm here to let you know that CCAT supports having you enter into a contract with Petaluma Animal Services, and that's not to denigrate the Napa Humane or the Napa shelter. I also wanted to note that there was a comment made that our local police have a relationship with the Napa shelter. And frankly, that's irrelevant because the local police do not do anything for animals that are in distress, as far as my experience with cats in Calistoga. One of the most recent times was I was called because there was a cat dying on First Street, and the police would not respond to it. So I went, I saw it was dying, and I called Dr. Franklin, and he came right over, and he took it, and we got it euthanized. But the police relationship with animal control is not a relevant point in this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose. Into the mic, please, so the people at home can hear you.
Oh, we've been told I'm loud enough. My name is John Lincoln. I actually live up in Childs Valley. But Dr. Franklin's been our vet for the past almost 8 years now, I guess. And anyway, I work on a ranch on top of Oakville Grade. And a couple of years ago, I turned around and there was a dog standing behind me, and he looked like he was on death's door. So I picked him up, and I went and got my wife, and she said, "Well, we've got to take him up to Dr. Franklin, and have him checked out." So we took him up, and Dr. Franklin ran a couple of quick tests, and he came back out, and he said he's got a horrible case of heartworm, and he goes, if you take him down to the Napa Animal Shelter, he goes, the odds of him being adopted are very low because he's got these heartworms. And he goes, they can't really treat the heartworms until they have somebody willing to adopt him because it's not affordable. And so he told us, he goes, we've got this organization called WeCal, and if you are willing to adopt this dog, we'll treat him for free. And so we went ahead and had him do that. And we've just got he's the greatest dog in the world. In fact, we just had some surgery done on him last week by Dr. Franklin and his partner. So anyway, that was a big consideration of ours when it came to an animal shelter was, the odds of the dog being treated and found a home or whether they would be euthanized. And so our vote personally would be to go with the Petaluma Animal Shelter just for the guarantee that he's got a lot better odds of making it. So that's what. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Just as a reminder, though, this is not a discussion with an agreement or a contract or services with anyone other than Napa County Shelter or Petaluma Animal Services. Thank you. Anyone else like to address this item? Yes, sir. Should you so choose, please share with us your name and address.
My name is Peter Heitz. I live at 2882 Foothill Boulevard in Calistoga. The point I'd like to make is that I believe that our tax dollars should stay inside Napa County and that there's a better synergy of service with the county. That we rely on the county sheriff to keep us safe, and when we have a mutual aid need, the CAL FIRE comes and helps us with fire trucks, and then in general keeping all our facilities and services in our county and our tax dollars going to the wonderful shelter in Napa and the animal control services that come from along with that. We would keep those dollars there and create our own strong capacity and bolster that so that that the animal shelter in Napa would be better funded through our work with them, and we'd be able to have our animals we all love and care for best kept and closer to home. I understand that the mileage and the time is a wash. I do think that tourists that might come here or locals that might lose their animal that aren't sitting in this room or watching this on TV, if my animals were to get loose and I wasn't aware that we had an animal control service in Petaluma, the place I would go look for them is in Napa. And if I was a visitor, visitors are obviously very important to our economy and to the reason why we all get to live here and have wonderful pets, take care of them, and donate to wonderful organizations that look after animals. Those people should have a voice in this too, and I think that they would never think that their animal might be sheltering over in Petaluma. And so I think the local option is Napa County services, and I believe that our animals will be cared for with love and compassion there, that none of the people on either side of this debate are working for these shelters or animal control services for the money or the glamour or anything else. it's a selfless job, and they do it because they love animals. So I think that a lot of the stuff I've read in the paper about how vile and awful the Napa County people are is obviously a bunch of rhetoric, and how I think that probably everybody that's sitting at these tables and everybody in this room today loves animals. That's why we're all here. But I do think that our animals would be well served to be closer to home. And
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please share with us your name and address, should you so choose.
Jens Vidger, 2996 Boulevard. I visited the Napa County Shelter, and I want to say it's a fantastic facility. It's run by great staff, great set of volunteers, and I think we have everything that we need right here in Napa County. I don't think there's any reason to spend our money, and our pets, and our stray animals, Petaluma, Sonoma County. There was one thing that I wanted to get a little bit of clarification on from the Petaluma Animal Services representative. He was speaking about that they had 3 officers on staff, worked 8-hour shifts, and then they had somebody on call. It's my understanding that they also have a contract with the city of Healdsburg, the city of Cloverdale, in addition to the city of Petaluma, in addition to the city of Calistoga we were looking at, and I know that they're going, it's my understanding that they're going after a contract with Mendocino County. I'm wondering how they would handle 2 calls simultaneously, 2 different. One other item as far as finances, I think if Napa County is hit hard by finances, I think it'll be across the board, and certainly charitable organizations hit just as hard as Napa. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Charter, would like to handle that question?
Sure.
Thank you.
We would handle that the same way Napa County would. We would take the officer that was on duty and respond.
But if there were simultaneous calls in different...
Right, I don't think there's a difference between Napa County or Petaluma in that regard. You got an officer who's already on duty and you respond to the call.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please share with us your name and address, should you so choose.
Keith Wepler. I live at 2970 Foothill Boulevard and own the residence at 2946 Foothill Boulevard. First, let me thank everyone for the time you spent with me on the phone or in person. I too visited the Napa shelter. And as a point of reference, my wife and I are tremendous animal lovers. At one point in time in our history, we found ourselves the local dumping ground for stray cats as we lived on a 6-acre farm with an old dairy barn. So my wife being the ringleader of this shelter we were starting, I constructed 3 rooms in the barn to house these over 25 cats we had. We managed to find homes for every single one of them through advertising in the paper. So I appreciate the work that both shelters are doing, and the work that Dr. Franklin is doing as well. I'm very impressed with the public-private partnership that Napa County has created with 15 different organizations. And the scope and breadth of that, I think, is something that's very advantageous. I do agree, too, that there's benefits to doing business within our own county, with the likelihood that if you lose your pet and you just don't know the area, Napa County is where you would call. I think those are some very good benefits. There's those synergies that the county has that's been working with Calistoga and Napa. We've talked about that already. Maybe you can give that brick back next year to Napa if there's a partnership that Calistoga has with the county of Napa on animal control. I know there's been a lot of discussion around the services that Dr. Franklin provides. We happen to be clients of Dr. Franklin, and I would echo those. His services are spectacular. I suspect that there's an opportunity that he would have with Napa County to provide some services to Kristen if the council would see that the contract should go to Napa. So I think there's I'd like to emphasize the public-private partnerships that's going on. I strongly feel that
30 seconds.
that this type of service is better served through those private-public partnerships and not through simply a private partnership. I worry about the discretionary nature of contributions that I think will dry up faster in a down economic time than tax revenues will dry up. The only way we find that out is for something bad to happen, but I think that's something that's very significant that we should think about.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Yes, please. You're allowed 1 minute on a secondary.
Okay. I just want to address Mr. Heights' concern with regards to animals being in Petaluma and people knowing where to look for them. WCAL, who will always continue to care about the welfare of animals, is very happy to be in Calistoga and post flyers and continue to put on our Facebook lost animals, and we'll work with Petaluma when animals are picked up. They'll communicate those to us, and we will be actively letting people know in Calistoga through posters and social media that their animals are in Petaluma.
And I assume you would do the same if the animal was in Napa.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, please. You've had the shortest walk to the podium. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose.
My name is Alyssa McNair. My address is 1517 Myrtle Street in Calistoga. And I just had a quick question for Napa County. I was wondering if you could tell us the total live release rate for all animals that come into your shelter.
Is that the last question you have?
Yes.
Thank you.
We break it down by species, and that's so that people can have a specific number based on the dog, the cat, and the rabbit species. So that, again, is 94% for dogs, 66% for cats, and 89% for rabbits.
Side your 3.
I was trying to do a little math as I was sitting here, taking the total intake numbers of 2776 for last year, subtracting the 1,000 plus animals adopted and the 640 animals that went back home to figure out what that might be, given the total numbers of each animal. I was wondering if you could give that to us.
That intake includes animals that we receive as euthanasia requests. So owners who are looking for a compassionate ending for their animal, that is a low-cost service that we provide. Also, animals do come in DOA, and those are counted as intake, given that they are handled by staff.
Yes. Do you have a total number you can give us?
Is that the 27?
2776.
We had a total of 10 DOA animals brought in by our officers, 14 brought in by owners, 127 brought in by over-the-counter strays, and 13 wildlife.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please share with us your name and address should you so choose.
Yes, I'm Dr. Steve Franklin of Calistoga Pet Clinic, and I live at, I usually live at 2960 Foothill Boulevard. I sometimes sleep on 2018 Bonnie Place. And one thing I wanted to thank the Napa County for is making it clear that Calistoga has never had my 20 years here, had a contract with animal control. It's always been a sticking point with the city, but it does, and it does unfairly then portray the County of Napa and the poor services. Explains part of the poor services that we've had over decades. Nonetheless, because of that issue, we have created WCAL and we have created a no-kill environment here, and I applaud the Napa County Shelter for being dramatically superior when it comes to governmental agencies, governmental animal control. However, at this point, they really don't fit the criteria that we have tried to establish and well established here in Calistoga. And I would really appreciate staying with that no-kill philosophy and considering peddling animal services or animal services. And that is really not in deference to Napa County. It's just staying with the philosophy we currently have and not sliding backwards. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a point of clarification, that I probably created confusion when I was asking about the response time in Napa County, understanding that we haven't, the city hasn't had, as an entity, had a contract with you. You have reported into or responded within Calistoga's unincorporated. Any other questions, comments before I close this and bring it back to the council for further discussion? Yes, sir. Please share with us your name and address, should you so choose.
Yes, my name is Ron McGoldrick. I'm at 2999 Foothill Boulevard, Calistoga. I just want to mention I am an animal person. I've owned horses, dogs, cats, tropical fish, birds, you name it. But I just feel that, you know, the Chamber of Commerce comes holidays, you see the signs around Calistoga, shop locally, support our local businesses, and that's kind of where I'm at on this. I think we should go with Napa County. It just seems the logical thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please share with us your name and address, should you so choose.
I live at 3260 Highway 1. I understand that certain people like to keep the center of everything up. However, I think what we need to look at here is the county. In all honesty, we live out hours. This has not really serviced us just because they're going to be getting our dollars in Napa County. They have a large span of area, so those dollars, it's like any company uses dollars, they'll spread it out. It isn't necessarily going to be that our service is going to be better up here. I think people need to realize that just because you want to keep something in the county, you have to really look seriously at all the things that they have to service and all the things that they have to do. They are a government entity, and they do have obligations to follow certain government. Deal with somebody as wonderful as Petaluma, such as Stephen, and no facility. It makes a huge difference. So at the end of the day, it really isn't the synergy. It hasn't anything to do with doing all your services in Napa County. Anybody that loses an animal is going to call the local police department, go online. It's a social media world. So that isn't an issue either. But I think the bottom line is have a facility that will not kill. That is the important thing. For anybody that owns animals or has lost an animal, they're going to realize how important that is. So don't be confused by the synergy of Napa County. Bottom line is for the 6 miles difference, we need service to support these animals in the city. And I will get that with Petaluma.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council on this topic? All right, not seeing any movement, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion, further clarification, etc. Council members, questions, clarifications?
I have a question for Pam Ingles. Okay, sorry. If you could step up to the mic.
And your question, I assume, is relating to her position with WCAL.
Yes.
Not as a resident.
No, as the president of WCAL or whatever your title is, I'm not sure.
Got it.
So we had a nice conversation, and I appreciated that. What I didn't quite understand, and if you could just elaborate on it, is my understanding is that WCAL does have a focus on Lake County and is not as focused on Napa County. Can you just...
That's correct.
explain
Well,
that?
our focus is on Calistoga, Upper Napa Valley. That's our priority. We never turn away an animal. We've never turned away an animal in need in our community. That is number one. We made the decision to go to support Napa County or Lake County because their demographics, their economics, their culture, unfortunately, does not provide the types of services that we're able to here. their shelter kill rate is about 35% for dogs. We feel it's right over the hill, and there's no one else to help them, and that in Napa County there are other rescues that can address the county shelter needs at that location much easier, and that Lake County has a bigger need. We also partnered those animals, and to clarify, those animals that we pull from Lake County, almost all of them go directly to Sonoma Humane Society. Sonoma Humane Society has asked us to pull animals for them. They also know of the need there, that very, very adoptable dogs in need, cats, are being killed. And so they have partnered, and we pull for them and take them to Sonoma Humane Society. And so that's our focus. Animals don't know their zip code, and we know that they're at the mercy of where they end up. And we feel strongly that we are just over the hill, and that we can make a difference, and that's why we focus on Lake County.
So my reason for asking that question, because my concern or my sense about that is there seems to be a sentiment about the kill rate of Napa County, and if your efforts in Lake County were shifted to Napa County and assisting the Napa County shelter, that their kill rate would be significantly better. I mean, clearly you have tremendous workforce of volunteers.
That's a little complicated issue, and this is not against the county at all, but I have worked with Sonoma County as a board member of Sonoma Humane Society. It is it's a bureaucracy. People do care about the animals. I think they do as good as they can to help the animals, but their focus is population control. I don't believe an organization without a willing partner is going to change a culture. If they were to come to us and ask us to make their organization as well as this community no kill, we would absolutely rise to that occasion and help that happen. But it's their choice to be kill or no kill, not ours. And at this point, it's not a matter of choosing a county shelter over another county shelter. It's where are the animals mostly at that need help. And when we pull an animal from a shelter that kills 35% of their dogs, we have some hope that that's going to open up space and significantly reduce that number. And that impact is huge. And there is no other organizations, or very few, that help in Lake County. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Barnes.
Yeah, I would like to kind of figure out how the workflow would go, or the logistics of this. And whichever way this contract is awarded. I find a dog on my street that's running loose. He doesn't seem to be vicious. He's just a lost doggy. I get him. I call either Napa or I call Petaluma, depending upon who's got the contract. They come and get him if I can restrain him. If I can't restrain him and he runs off, but he's clearly lost, do I still call them? Second scenario, this dog is injured. He has a broken leg and he's laying in the street in front of my house. Do I call them, or can I pick that dog up and take it to Steve Franklin and say, Steve, I got a broken leg here. Don't worry about it. I'll pay for it if you got to pay for it. Does Steve then call Petaluma or Calistoga once he's got the dog's leg set and triage has been performed? How do we go about this, again, for the best interests of the animals, which either way we go?
Well, that's a very good question. Typically, many times we get calls from people that find strays, and they contain them, respond, and pick up the dog. We'll check to, check with neighbors to see if they knew who the dog belongs to. Sometimes they have a microchip in it, so we can identify who the owner is. Take them, contact the owner, so we don't have to take them to the shelter.
So you have a mobile chip identifier?
Yes.
Okay.
In the event where you found an injured animal and took it to a local veterinarian, then absolutely the veterinarian can call us and we can come and assist with impounding the dog or finding the owners of the dog.
Go ahead.
And we would pay the bill.
Oh, better. And I assume the same answer from Petaluma?
Yeah, that's standard procedure.
I would think that most of the calls that originate for a lost dog would probably go to the police department first. Just kind of a guess on it that people would say, "Hey, there's a dog running around the neighborhood here barking," and they'd get a call like that.
Chief Sly, is that generally how it happens? Our police chief's in the back there. Thank you.
Then what about the same scenario? Very vicious dog. He's obviously a threat to me and anybody else that might be around.
Call the police.
Call the police, and they contact either one of you, and in tandem somehow corral this vicious dog.
Yes, that's correct. We would respond as quickly as possible. But since this is shaping up to be a competition, I just did want to say we'd pay the bill faster.
But they could do an inter-county transfer.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Just a joke.
Thank you.
I'm guessing that both organizations will provide a certain amount of training to our police department on how to handle, how you would like these situations handled rather than just leave it to chance.
We can't provide that training, and we work with different local law enforcement agencies all the time, especially with vicious dogs or dogs that are in traffic, and it really takes teamwork sometimes to solve those issues.
And the dog may not be vicious, just scared out of its mind and
that's correct.
lashing out.
Any other council members, questions, clarification?
I just had one question for the city manager. If we decided either way, how will we notify the public? How will how they will let them know who is the one who's gonna be in charge?
Yeah, once the city council approves professional services agreement with whatever group it decides, we would do that at a public meeting, and then after that we would start training in terms of getting the police department aware and dispatch how to deal with situations. But we would do public noticing in the newspaper, internet, whatever, work with WCAL in terms of letting people know. We'd have to get the word out. I think an important point was brought up. Our police officers haven't been trained to deal with animal control issues because apparently we didn't have any agreement with that. And I think that has to change, where they're more responsive to that, working with whomever you hire to take on this service.
Could we do something like put a notice in the water bills when they come out, just so it would be wide?
Sure.
Thank you. Any other council members? I have a question for Kristen Loomer. So you're currently at 94% live release rate.
For dogs.
For dogs, thank you. So what would it take for you to get to a 97% for dogs?
It would take having an increased foster program, having greater resources for those dogs that do not do well in kennel environments. We have dogs that thrive outside of the kennel environment, as we've seen in the foster homes that we are able to place, but we just need to increase those numbers.
In prior to the 3.5 years ago when you started, do you recall what their using apples to apples, what the live release rate was on dogs at that point?
It was in the high 70s, low 80s.
Thank you. And then an overall live release rate statistic. I know you break it down by species, but is there, I know you were trying to get to that number before.
I think the clearest matter of breaking it down is by species. Taking an aggregate of those numbers isn't a true reflection, in my opinion.
For Mr. Charter, in terms of cats being part of your program, being brought to you, or you having to go out and retrieve and take, etc., what percentage of those would you say would be deemed feral? Because we have had, and it's getting better through Kristen's organization, have had a serious feral cat problem here in the past.
Sure.
I assume you deal with that in the other municipalities.
Yeah, we don't use the F word in Petaluma. We say community cats. I think there's a negative connotation attached to that. We don't believe that the unwillingness of a cat to sit in your lap and purr should be a death sentence. So we find alternative placements for those that can't be handled in the typical adoption process. Go live in your house and cuddle up with the kids, that kind of thing. But they can work out for rodent control at wineries or barn homes, those kind of things. We work with our local feral cat organization to do that.
So what percentage of the cats you intake would be community cats, if we're not using the F word?
We don't separate them, and Petaluma cats are cats. So we just have cat intakes.
And how many cat intakes annually?
It runs about 50-50 between dogs and cats. So you're probably somewhere in the 700 range.
Kristen, can you remind us how many cats you took? Thank you.
We are similar in about 50-50.
Okay. We can do the math from there unless it's us.
I prefer to take out the DOAs, though, just so you have a really live number of intake. We took in 651 stray cats and 125 owner-surrendered cats last year. The animal service officers brought us 59. So, yeah.
Thank you. Council members, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more for Christine. Is there a public transportation bus stop nearby the shelter?
Yes, there's one right around the corner on Gasser Drive, right in front of the movie theater.
Okay. Just a comment, really, for the council for consideration that really hasn't been mentioned is that we have a large senior population. We have 3 mobile home parks. We have a lot of people that are dependent on public transportation. And clearly, Napa provides that option. Petaluma facility does not.
I have one comment about that. I know, as you say, we had a big senior population that either they had a little dog or a cat that is the only companion they have. And those seniors, they depend a lot on volunteers and friends and neighbors. So I think because, most of the local, we had a lot of volunteers local, they depend on that. Not necessarily they can take the bus and go to either one of the shelters. They will use the volunteers, their neighbors.
All right. Any other questions? Either of the service providers, any last commentary? We thank you for being here. We know we've kept you here a long time. All right. So we have items before us. You're welcome to step down if you like. Let's thank them for being here. This is not an easy thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. There are 2 organizations doing great work, so thank you for that and continue that. So what we have before us this evening is a request by the city manager to give staff direction on who to enter into final service agreement discussions with in terms of animal services, animal control, and animal sheltering. So with that before you, our choices as we've presented are solely Petaluma Animal Services or Napa County Shelter and Animal Control Service.
And each contract's 3 years?
We would negotiate that, but informal discussions seem to be that seems to be the time period everyone's comfortable with.
So a 1 year's trial is not acceptable, or?
I think we can present whatever option we want for their discussion.
Yeah, whatever you want, but you can see how the county they structured in a phase in.
Right.
So they like to to see a commitment, and I'm sure Petaluma would be similar.
As attractive as a 1-year trial thing seems, there are staffing issues for both those organizations. And as their responsibilities increase, they're going to get more and more calls for service, and that's going to translate into either a deterioration of their response time, or they're going to have to invest in some additional staff. So I can understand why 3 years would be desirable for either organization, just for that reason, that they want to make sure there's some stability there, so that when they make the decision on staffing, that they have some funding that they can rely on.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Kraus. 1 year I don't think is sufficient to really analyze and judge either organization. We're both new to each other. They're both new to this territory. We haven't had a contract such as this in a long time. I would think I'd be much more comfortable with a 3 year, which we could then renegotiate at the end of 3 years.
Contracts also would have exit clauses for failure of service. Most of our service agreements, as all of our service agreements.
Default clauses.
Other questions or clarifications?
I'm sure there'd be like a 6-month requirement before a renewal would be come up. In other words, we would have some kind of a window in there to let the organization know that we intended to continue or we did not intend to continue.
Yeah, usually you give them a year's advance notice that you're going to terminate the contract.
So then in that case, it's actually like a 2-year trial before we would.
Yeah.
My comment is that I feel like everybody in this room would like Napa County to be able to provide our service, but
excuse me.
No.
Excuse me.
I'm saying
let him finish, please.
if they became a no-kill, if they met their numbers, I think everybody in this room, we wouldn't have this issue if they were no-kill. And so it really seems like the county, the people that live in the county, should be working towards that effort. And us taking a position in Calistoga and contracting with Petaluma, I do think sends a pretty strong statement. And frankly, I'm actually quite shocked by the ordinance that Councilmember Barnes read. The language, the fact that it hasn't been updated since the 70s, that's new information to me. I'm really happy you brought that up. I find it quite shocking that there are not volunteers, people who care, who are taking this issue to the Board of Supervisors. That's the very first place you start. It's your mission statement. It lives in the ordinance. That's the law. The city, the elected officials, the paid staff follow those rules and regulations. And I applaud. I visited Napa County. I had a great experience. Miss Loomer spent a lot of time with me. I met other staff and volunteers. I was very impressed with the operation. And I applaud them for the improvements they've made over the last 3 years. But I just can't believe that the ordinance has not been changed to reflect the mindset that has changed, the culture that I think is in the process of changing at Napa County. So the dilemma for me is, how do we keep pushing on Napa County to keep working towards making more strides and working towards a no-kill? Do we have a seat at the table? Do we have a voice? Or do we walk away and contract with Petaluma? So I think there's a lot to be said to have a voice at the table. And we're giving that up. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I agree with most of what Councilman Dunsford said, and thank you for listening to what I had to say on that ordinance. I don't think it is up to the city of Calistoga to teach the county how to run their shelters. I think it's the business of Calistoga to take care of the animals that live here. And
I had a polite request at the beginning. Please, no applause. Thank you.
And I, too, applaud Napa County for what they have accomplished in the 3.5 years that Christine has been there. I think she has done a magnificent job. It's a great facility. Both facilities are great facilities. But I think it comes down to me for what is best for the animals of Calistoga.
I just had one last comment to say. I just want to let everybody know that I, as Vice Mayor Dunsford did, I print and read every single letter. I met with few people that I was able to. I listened to everybody's concern. So I share as a neighbor their concerns and the issues, and I understand everybody. And as Mr. Barnes say, it's all for the animals of Calistoga.
I started saying earlier, I have never seen this kind of a public reaction to any proposal that's come before this city council, and that includes the resorts. You know, so it apparently there is a unifying factor here in town. Overwhelmingly, the communications that I have had from folks have been in support of the Petaluma option. I don't see that there is a huge financial difference between the two operations, so I think, and I don't see a huge difference in the travel times to either of the shelters. So I think it comes on down to, as Councilman Barnes and Iris has said, what's best for our animals, and there is a difference there, I believe. So.
Thank you. Challenging discussion. Obviously, I had met with both facilities, talked to, and been spoken to by several folks. And I too applaud the work that's happened down at the shelter, Napa County Shelter, over the last 3.5 years since Ms. Loomer's arrival. And I think that there is positive momentum that can get you there. I share some of the similar feelings as Vice Mayor Dunsford in terms of, if we're going to be a no-kill or a larger live release rate county, it's going to take the efforts of all of us. There are other organizations within the county of Napa that support, nonprofit organizations that support the Napa County Shelter and have helped them get from that high 70s number to, using dogs, high 70s numbers to the mid 90s or early 90s numbers. I think that can only be improved by more organizations being involved with that group. When you look at take a macro picture of this and all of the other relationships we have for health and human services with the county, they've come in long stride over the last 4 years to provide in-town services for senior citizens, which, as Councilmember Lopez Ortega knows, was not here for a number of years. They actually have officials here for building services, for health services, et cetera, continuing to be more of an outreach organization to the rest of the county. The support that people offer to help, find the owners of their animals if they're found in Calistoga, or help seniors or other people who aren't able to get to where their animal may be, I would hope would remain regardless of where this ends up. The financial question is relatively moot at the early stage of this. The public transportation issue is a little bit of a concern for me. There is public transit that can get you to Napa County. But for me, overall, and again, this is a decision between these two organizations, not any other organization in Calistoga. I would prefer, as we have with most things and been well served by most things, to be a little more Napa-centric on that. With that said, we have a choice between us, and we'll entertain a motion to give direction, and this would be roll call, to city staff to pursue a service agreement with either of these two facilities or organizations.
I would like to make a motion to direct the city manager to negotiate a professional services agreement for animal control services to include field and shelter services for the city of Calistoga to the Petaluma Animal Shelter.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second, sorry, a motion by Councilmember Barnes. I told you I'd mix that up. And a second by Councilmember Kraus. Any further motions? Any further discussion? All right. Will we roll call this? City Clerk Lamson.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Kraus?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dunsford?
No.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Mayor Canning?
No. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll pursue a contract with Petaluma Animal Services. We are going to take a 5-minute comfort break before we roll into the next one. A strict 5 minutes. Thank you all. Councilmember Barnes, you have 45 seconds for your comfort break. All right.
I think so.
All right, we will reconvene this meeting after a short break. We are moving on to item number 6, consideration of the type of affordable housing for a .74 acre parcel located at 611 Washington Street. Recommended action is by motion. Provide direction. I feel compelled to note, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I have to say it. For a topic that we just covered, we had a completely standing room only audience. Yet we're moving on to a topic that nobody can dispute is a critical human issue in Calistoga, and that's affordable housing. And I realize it's getting late. And perhaps if the agenda items were rejiggered, we might have a different audience. But I feel compelled to note that, and should the press choose to print it, I will take my lickings. City Manager Spittler, please take us through this next item.
Thank you. In February of this year, the council authorized me to enter into negotiation to purchase a .74 acre parcel at 611 Washington Street for acquisition for affordable housing development. The Corporation of Better Housing has an option to purchase from the property owner this property. This is the corporation that developed the farm worker family housing project at the north end of Washington Street. So I think they've proven that they're quite capable of securing grant monies, building a project, and I'm pleased to say that people are starting to move into that project, and the planning department staff is getting information from the owners so that we can give this to the community about the occupants of that housing project. This project on Lower Washington, again, I approached Corporation for Better Housing with council direction. They are agreeable to assign the purchase agreement to the city for us to buy the property, but In return, they would like an option over a 3 to 5 year period, first right to seek funds and develop the property. Which they want to keep it they want to be the first ones to have an opportunity to develop it as affordable housing. In talking with them, when the council gave me direction in February, he said yes, pursue it as affordable housing, but there was no consensus of the council on what type of affordable housing would be developed on the property. At the time, I mentioned the Corporation for Better Housing had wanted to develop a senior housing project, a 3-story senior housing project. They felt that that was could work on the site because it has a reduced parking demand, and also they could get be competitive in terms of getting funds, particularly tax credit funding. So again, when I talked to them about possibly purchasing the property, they said, well, we want to be first right to develop it. And I said, well, and what kind of housing? They said, well, the only thing that we think will work will be senior housing. So I kind of got stuck at that point. I said, well, I have to bring this back to my council for you to decide what kind of housing would you want to see on that property. I would agree that there's urgent need for family housing or workforce housing. My experience in housing, affordable housing development, which I have a lot of it, is when you get into families or working individuals, couples, they need at least 2 parking spaces per unit. And it would be a big mistake to compromise on that. You look at the subject property, it's not big enough to provide parking for family-oriented housing or housing with 2 individuals that may be living there, each having a car. However, if you get into senior projects, and I did one in Healdsburg, they generally, at the type of seniors which are very low income that would go in this project, they usually have only 1 car per household. And many times they can't drive at all. It's public transit. Other kinds of special housing needs, such as transitional housing, the same thing, they generally don't own a vehicle. And so that seems to be what Corporation for Better Housing feels, and in my judgment as a planner and developer of affordable housing in other cities, this site is constrained in that way. So I'm bringing the issue back to the council for your direction in terms of are you agreeable to have this be a senior housing project, give this Corporation for Better Housing kind of first crack at developing the property, seeking funds and developing it. Ben Lingo and Justin Hart from Corporation for Better Housing are here this evening. I asked them to be prepared to ask questions about parking needs or their information and to address the council. So I seek direction. What do you want me to do?
Thank you. We'll take disclosures now. I'll give the first disclosure. This afternoon, I had the time and pleasure to meet with Ben Lingo and Justin Hart for a tour of Corporation for Affordable Housing, for a tour of Calistoga Family Apartments. Upon conclusion of the tour, we did discuss this topic.
I did the same several weeks ago. I met with Ben.
I didn't meet with them, but just before the place opened, I walked onto the property and saw some of your managers there and walked around, and it certainly is a credit to your company and a credit to this community to have that, I believe.
I did exactly what Councilman Kraus did. I walked around and looked at it, and my comments are the same. Great.
I did not meet with any of you, but I visited the place and I saw recently a few of the families moving in, and I think you did a good job.
A lot of smiles on folks over there. That's always good to see.
So none of us trespassed because it was already open at that point, right?
It was
an active construction site.
Gary had a lost dog.
The keep out sign was gone. The trailer with that has videotape of me walking my dog, it's all gone.
All right. I did, in my conversation with Ben and Justin today, did say, while we are here specifically for the topic of 611 Washington Street, that because they were just opening and they have a fantastic facility, that they were fair game by the council to ask questions about how the new program is running. So,
I do have one question. What happened to the gate that the Rotary put in the fence over at the Logvy Park?
there's a better pass.
And not, yeah, it's just an open passageway now.
He'll get to that after.
Okay, sorry.
If you could please, unless anyone has any questions of staff at this point, we'll go right into Mr. Lingo. Please introduce yourself, tell us who you're with, and share with us the address of the organization from which you're from, should you so choose.
Fantastic. Good evening, Mayor Canning, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. I'm Ben Lingo, and here this evening to discuss the potential development of 611 Washington Street. While our address is in Woodland Hills, I prefer to say that our address is now 1715 Washington Street here in Calistoga. I would tell you that as the owner of a large breed rescue and a brand new puppy, I did not envy the decision that you had to make about 15 minutes ago.
I hope yours goes better.
That being said, I will keep my comments to a minimum and do my best to be as expeditious as possible. And I do appreciate meeting Mayor Canning and Vice Mayor Dunsford on site to show what we've been able to do and give you an idea of what we've been able to accomplish really as an organization, but also really working very, very closely with the city. Mr. Spittler's staff, Eric Lundquist, et cetera, have been a joy to work with, and we really do appreciate it. And what I'll do is take a quick second and discuss, we've been open now for about a month, and I can give kind of like a first month of operation update. First of all, this is what I'm talking about is Calistoga Family Apartments at 1715 Washington Street. To date, we've had 22 of the 48 units are now occupied and people have moved in. We also have an additional 19 that are scheduled over about the next 7 to 10 days. So we have 41 people that are either have actual signed leases or very close to signed leases. So we have 41. In discussing this with staff just today, the thought is that it'll be 100% leased by the end of the month and 100% occupied in around May 15th. This is a great first month, a fantastic first month. I think it shows the tremendous pent-up demand, and I think it also is also a tribute to the development. We're very fortunate to obtain the financing that we did, and I will do my best not to rehash it, but it's special. The fact that it's LEED Platinum, the fact that it's net zero energy, meaning we will produce as much electricity on site as we use, the fact that we are part of the WaterSense program, there are not too many affordable housing developments like this in the world, much less California, much less Napa County, much less Calistoga. It's something we're extremely proud of, and something that we will continue to work to do our best to meet the standards or exceed the standards of the city. Also wanted to talk about just briefly of the 41 households that either have signed leases or are in the process of signing leases. I found this interesting. 33 of those families previously lived in Calistoga. That's always a goal. We obviously cannot preclude people from moving here. However, the fact that we do have 33 of 41, I think, is nice. The statistics that I have are a little bit anecdotal and a little bit loose, but what I was told is that of the other 8, 7, I believe, were from Napa, and 2 were actually from the city of Sonoma. And again, that's somewhat anecdotal, so bear with me as far as that goes. I also found it interesting. We did just a really quick survey today, actually, after a meeting with the mayor, and we thought that this was also interesting. Of the co-head of households or the co-applicants, we have 7 housekeepers, 5 cashiers, 8 server cooks, 2 dishwashers, a landscaper, a medical assistant, and then 2 of whom are disabled. So when we talked about this development, it was, is this going to meet our workforce needs? Is it going to help to meet our workforce needs? And the goal and the hope was that yes, it would. Many times 2 people in the household work. They then apply as co-head of households. So we do have folks that stay at home with their children, but the ones that do work, as we can see, vast numbers, which are working mostly in the service industry, which we found interesting.
Ben, I appreciate that number because, as you know, when this project came to us in its final format, it was very specific for obvious reasons, the funding source, that it was for the farming industry. And there was a great deal of concern about, well, what about the service industry, which we have to address? So, cohabitants of those primarily farming households, those are great numbers. So we appreciate that.
I really no, listen, I really appreciate it. It was something. It's difficult to stand up here and to project, to guess, well, we'll have this many in the service industry. We were confident that we would have many, but needless to say, development to development is very different. We're very fortunate. We have 64 units. 64 developments in our portfolio, about 4,200 units, but no two are exactly the same. So we were very confident that we would be helping to meet that workforce need. But again, it was nothing but a best guess at that point. But it is very comforting and nice to see that hopefully we're helping in both cases. Segueing and moving now to 611 Washington Street, I understand, and I do get the fact that it's kind of become this discussion: is it senior housing or is it workforce or family housing? And I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I'd like to direct the discussion to a slightly different tangent. What can we do with this parcel so the development can effectuate the most change? How can we get the most bang for our buck? The reality of it is that, and we all know this, is that Calistoga has a shortage of affordable housing. This is a shortage of family housing or workforce and a shortage of senior housing. Families struggle to find housing that they can afford, that aren't overcrowded. These overcrowded situations put stress on the family unit, but they also put stress on the city's infrastructure, whether it be police, fire, the schools, water systems, sewer systems, etc. Houses were not designed to have 2 or 3 families living in them. One-bedroom apartments weren't designed to have 5 people living in them. Not always the case, but we do find it becoming more and more common. At the same time, seniors have a completely different struggle, or I say a similar but different struggle. And how can we find something that we can afford or that a senior can afford and also age in place? When we are at retirement age and we have a second floor unit, or we're in a mobile home that has stairs leading to our front door, that becomes much, much more different as we age in place. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not retirement age, but I'm now older than that. All of a sudden, these stairs become very difficult to navigate, particularly if I'm carrying cargo, groceries, etc. So there are issues in both cases. So again, I think the solution to the problem in this case is not mutually exclusive. We are not going to only address one if we can create the most affordable housing or the most affordable opportunities that we possibly can. So again, I'm looking now as a Calistoga stakeholder, how can we effectuate the most change? I won't beat a dead horse, but the most bang for our buck. Where can we do this the best? In this case, the parcel at 611 Washington is just very difficult because it's very small. It's 3/4 of an acre. It's one of the few zoned pieces of property in town. So it's zoned R3. It's zoned for the intended use. But the fact of the matter is there are very few that are zoned, and there are even fewer that are for sale. So what do we have available to us now, and what can we do the most good with? And that is really the reason that we are looking towards seniors. If we were to look at family or workforce housing, I'm afraid that we could only get about 12 units on the site. 12 units is very, very difficult. 12 units just doesn't support on-site professional management and maintenance, and it would be very difficult to operate it to our standards and to the city standards and be only 12 units. However, a senior development, as Mr. Spittler was mentioning, has less parking requirements. While we would have outdoor recreation in areas, it would be less than if it were a family development. So we can get 30 units, and we're playing with some thoughts to even get slightly more than 30, but about 30 units. So this would be 30 units that could be served by an elevator that would allow seniors to age in place in an amenity-rich, affordable housing. This is also 30 units. The hope would allow 30 senior households to move out of existing single-family homes, apartments, mobile homes, etc. in this event, this would obviously free up these units, hopefully work for working families. This is something that we've seen throughout the state when we do develop, particularly in impacted communities like Calistoga, where all of a sudden seniors now have a choice. Again, they're able to move out of houses, apartments, etc. You hope that those workforce families can move in and again effectuate the most change. So again, is there a shortage of workforce housing in Calistoga? Undoubtedly. However, again, I just really want to stress that I think the best solution at this particular location, the way that we can do the best development to our standards, to your standards, to the resident standards, would be to do seniors. So at this point, Justin and I are here to answer questions, and I appreciate the time and try not to be too redundant or get on my soapbox too much. Thank you.
So just so I'm clear, you're leaning toward senior housing?
Yes, sir. Just if you didn't get that in the 20 times I mentioned it in the last 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ben. Council members, questions of staff, questions of Mr. Lingo or Mr. Hart?
Is senior and workforce housing mutually exclusive?
No.
So we could, you
Sorry.
define the age of the resident, right? Let's call it 55 because that's what the mobile home parks are. There are a lot of people, seniors, 55 to 70, that are still working. And could they could qualify for this type of housing?
Yes.
Okay, and then secondly,
Is it usually 65?
What's your age cutoff?
Yeah,
I'm glad.
yeah, what is your age cutoff?
It depends on the funding source, but what we are seeing is a gravitation more to 62 and older. We do have some that are 55. When I say some sources of financing, but typically we're seeing it go more towards 62.
Because there are more folks that are working farther into traditional retirement.
Yes, sir.
To 70, 75. Secondly, can you mandate the number of cars a resident can own? Or can you only mandate the parking spots?
You can mandate the parking spots.
But you can't say to them, you can only own one to live here because you can't park the other one on the street.
What you could do is that you could not allow, or you could disallow. You could assign a parking spot on site, and needless to say, if somebody were to pay for storage off-site, have a family,
Right.
et cetera, they could park it elsewhere. But you can mandate that they don't, park illegally, that they don't become a nuisance, that sort of thing. What ends up happening with affordable housing, whether it's workforce, let's call it family or senior, you see parking demands that are much lower than what we maybe would normally think of. Portfolio-wide, again, we've got about 4,200 units. Of those 4,200 units, a little over 3,000 of them are family. We've actually done parking surveys on the entire portfolio. The most intense parking demand that we've seen is less than 1.5 per unit. We typically see in many communities, just like Calistoga, very similar to Calistoga, parking demand of 1.1 to 1.2 stall per unit. The reason for it is the folks that live here have relatively low incomes. We see also for seniors, we see a parking demand between 0.5 and 0.75. So what often confuses the issue is we see market rate housing that's become kind of affordable, what I call affordable by default, meaning it's market rate, people can charge whatever they want to charge, but through deferred maintenance, et cetera, it's now become below market. The way that people then or families can afford to live there is maybe to double up. So now there are 2 and 3 cars, or we see multiple adults living in a unit and you see 2 or 3 cars. Well, they wouldn't qualify typically to live in this sort of housing because, again, either the occupancy would be too high or their incomes would be too high. So it would be very common, let's say that the income for a family of 4 would be, just give you a number, $45,000. Well, $45,000 for a traditional family, they qualify for affordable. They probably own a car, possibly 2. However, if it were, let's say, 3 adults, their income was $45,000. On average, that'd be $15,000 per adult. Owning 3 cars in that scenario is very, very rare.
So you can then define the income brackets as you did for first
Yes.
one, and you can define the number of residents.
Yes. There are occupancy
And-
standards in all of our units.
So assuming these are all going to be 1 bedroom, or most of them,
Yes.
you could say, all right, no more than 2 people, and then whatever the income requirements would be and you could then get senior and workforce combined.
Yes.
Potentially.
Exactly. So long.
Okay.
Exactly. So long as.
So it can satisfy a lot of needs from a lot of different areas.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other council members?
I think I have not heard of a parking issue with the Palisades apartments, but at one point, the La Padera apartments, there was a lot of cars that residents had that couldn't be parked on site, and they wound up parking up and down Brannan there and everything, causing some problems. So I think the formula for parking that we have for Palisades apartment is one that works for family housing. And so I think if you take that formula and then apply it to this piece of property, you're probably correct. You don't get nearly as many units on the property, and there goes your funding, and difficult to put that kind of money together. I'm for whatever kind of housing we can get on there. If we can get senior housing on there, fine. If we can get family housing on there, fine. If we make a decision here tonight to do one or the other of those, the disappointing thing would be to find out later that we couldn't do that, but we've got more farm worker housing going in there, or we've got senior housing when you said we could get family housing or family housing, because what winds up happening is you get expectations in the community, and then folks are disappointed. So I think we want to stay in the loop on the thing and direct this towards something that's most likely to be successful in the funding. But if that changes, then certainly we want that brought back to this council as early as possible, just to give us a heads up.
And I think
wouldn't all those problems be precluded if we own the property?
I was going to say the situation this time
That
around.
situation would be entirely different.
We're
we
a
own
sta-
it,
we're a
it's our
stakeholder.
call.
That's true.
Any other council members? Comments? Questions?
I have for staff, I do. Is this the time?
Absolutely.
Okay. So my issue with this is I fully understand and am aware that Calistoga needs housing, period. And that covers the full spectrum of housing. But within that list of priority housing, I have trouble designating and focusing on senior housing when we have 3 mobile home parks in Calistoga that have a rent stabilization ordinance, which keeps it affordable. And my big concern is that we have very limited resources, very limited available land, and we have one resort that just opened, and we have 2 other large luxury resorts that will be opening within the next 5-6 years. And we need, I think we need just market rate housing. We have the ability, the city, on this property to create high density market rate housing and lessen the parking need and address and focus on that hospitality manager person, full-time professional bartender person who is going to be working in our industry, our primary industry. And right now, we don't have those places for those people to live. It's already a problem. I won't mention them by name, but one of the new managers of Indian Springs happens to live in a house and rents out his rooms. That's how he can afford that house. So I would like to see this developed with our control. We can regulate in the parking requirement, less asphalt, higher density, single, one-room studios, and to really target, which I actually consider it workforce housing, even though it's not going to be subsidized. But due to the fact that it's higher density, that's going to bring the market rate down so that it is more affordable for the single person that is basically here to operate our engine.
Thank you. Any other one? Council members?
I agree with that, but how do we do it? Who builds it? And
Councilmember Lopez Ortega, do you have any commentary on this?
Yes, I know we had the 3 parks, the mobile home parks, and we had a lot of seniors living there. But also we are facing the baby boomers, people who's gonna be retired very soon, and we're gonna need more senior housing. So I agree with you that we need the workforce housing too. But this community, Calistoga, is being seen by a lot of people who's retirement as their retirement place. So we out for
I
them.
think there are a lot of second homes out in those mobile home parks that really aren't what we might think of as senior housing. They're weekend.
yes,
This is, from my perspective, this is a topic I've struggled with as well because there are clearly great demands on all elements, family, workforce, senior, etc. But looking at the logistics, the restrictions, the fundamentals of all this, feeling comfortable with what Corporation for Affordable Housing has done with us as a partner so far. We reference checked them prior. This is they're the this is their domain. I'm comfortable with their assessment of the situation. I'm comfortable with your assessment of where else could I get funding to promote workforce housing, family housing, etc. And then looking at the limitations of this particular facility, I should say space, parcel. I would love to see more parcels become available, but faced with what we have here, I think it's a reasonable and responsible use of our in lieu fees for affordable housing, which is, I believe, where these funds are coming from, Richard?
We would have to also borrow from the general fund, but it would be paid back when Silver Rose pulls its.
As an in lieu for affordable housing?
Right.
Okay. So I'm comfortable with that. And I'd love to find a parcel somewhere else. I think we spoke briefly about a parcel I'd love for you to go check out that can stir up maybe some more space. But I will open this to the public for any comment, unless council members have any further questions of staff or Mr. Lingo.
I
Please.
have one. Yeah, I agree 100% with what Councilman Dunsford has said. Problem is the land. And do you guys build affordable housing for workforce? Is that one of the options that you do if we had the land?
Yes, when we're talking about affordable housing in general, I would consider it workforce housing. So what that typically...
Yeah, to the people that Michael has just described, the bartenders, the waiters, the professional service people he deals with every day in his establishment, and we're going to get lots more of them need them. How do we go about that if we find the land? Is that something you can do?
Oh, undoubtedly, and it would be my hope, and we're in a constant search for that land. We're actually in contact with 3 landowners in town. Their properties aren't currently for sale. Justin's had the misfortune, I guess, to call them probably once or twice a week, in case that they do change their mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
No, and the reality is, and when I met with Mr. Dunsford, I echoed his sentiments. I completely understand there is a desperate need for housing here, and I wish that this site were different. In a similar community, Santa Paula, California, the density per unit that was allowed by code was, I believe, 22 per unit. We went there with a density bonus and actually developed 66 units to the acre. We did a subterranean garage and went 3 stories over the top. It was a different setting. It was in their downtown core. It made sense. Here we started looking at the possibility of a subterranean garage. It backs right up to the Napa River. It's just not feasible.
You have to put a sump pump in.
Exactly. And and again, that was our first goal is always going to be family. It's just particularly here where we see such a desperate need. It doesn't work here. And my fear is, again, you look at a 12, 13, 14 unit development, whether we do it or somebody else does it, it's just really difficult to make the operations pencil. So what ends up happening is services get cut, management gets cut, and all of a sudden it's not one family per unit, but it's 2 or 3 families per unit to make it pencil. And that's the reason why I would just, again, strongly suggest that it go towards senior, with the reality that we would love nothing more than to continue this relationship and find a parcel that it worked. And that's what we plan on doing.
I have a question. You weren't able to get funding for all the units that you wanted to build down at the family apartments.
This was kind of an interesting happening, but what happened, the way that the property was actually zoned, I'm sorry, not zoned, but it was the way that it was surveyed for the floodplains, we had an approval for an additional 8 units. At the time that we actually made application, it was deemed to be in the floodplain. The whole site is now out of the floodplain.
Okay.
We could go back and develop it. It's our hope and our intent to go back at a later date and develop those additional 8 units. We're actually in the process as we speak, trying to gain the approval of our lenders and investors and able to do that.
Okay, so would that necessarily also then be farm worker based?
Not necessarily.
That might be
that would, and again, that would be our hope. We're working toward it. And what I would prefer to do is at a later date, as we get further into it, come and report back what we've learned. The last thing I want to do is mislead anybody, just because of the fact that it's just now opening. We do have to gain approvals to be able to do it. It's our hope and it's our intent. But right now, it's just our hope and our intent.
Thank you very much. I will open this to the public. Anyone in the public like to comment on this? Mr. Levisi, do you own any land in the city limits you would like to partner with these gentlemen on? Speaking of landholders, you should be calling Justin right here.
Clarence Levisi, 285.
Land Baron.
2 points. First of all, I think the city council's, this one, everyone included, has done a great job and a very difficult job over a number of years now, dealing with the affordable housing issues and our Calistoga affordable housing. I guess part of me says, I just want to say, I'm not into the details of this stuff, but you guys are doing a really good job of getting into it and recognizing the complications. So with that said, I want to.
Is this where the but comes in?
No, it's not a but. No. At the same time, I want to open an issue which probably none of you will be happy about, because I'll be bringing it back later.
Is this on topic, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the question is, why do we need affordable housing? Because people are paid wages that are not minimum and not living. In this town also. This is a city Calistoga issue. And you have the responsibility of seeing to it that the people who work here can live here and can afford their homes and their food and their travel and their vacations and their education. It pisses me off over the years to go to graduations and have banks and other people give money away and say, "Oh, aren't we wonderful?" It's like the 2 or 3 big giants in the corporations of the computers are now trying to spend millions to redeem their names over all the businesses that they destroyed and the families they destroyed, climbing where they're at. This town, we have workers, and I know because I've talked to different ones, who make 9, 10, 11. You're lucky if you're making $12 an hour. And how many of you sitting here have tried to live for a month on $12 an hour for 40 hours? Think about it, because this has to be talked about, and it's being nationally discussed now. They're talking about 15 and 50. $15 an hour for 50 states. Jumping to 50 is hard. I think it's good. I think it's a necessary goal, but I think it's going to be something that one has to do reasonably and carefully. So I think there's balance here in everything. But the fundamental problem is still, it's been 30 years that workers have always been going downhill. And when we get minimum and then living wages, the people in this town who are working in all of these places at $200, $400, and $600 a night, they're working there, they're making it work. They will have a place to live in Calistoga. And that's not negative to this. This
Understood.
is
Understood.
extremely positive.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Levisi.
It's a new issue.
Thank you. Sure we will. Anyone else? All right, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. So what we have in front of us is city staff via the city manager is seeking direction on what type of housing, first, what type of housing should we pursue with corporations for affordable housing so that the process can continue or begin in some cases, so that funding sources will be found, pursue what we direct the council in securing this part. Did I summarize that okay?
I think the city should acquire the property and take a little bit more time to really assess the housing situation and what the options are. And I would like some sort of a report or information, just something that addresses the plan that I'm suggesting, which is basically specified in the urban design plan, which allows for higher density housing in Lower Washington and a loosening of restrictions on parking, and possibly, and even speaks to this specifically, creating sort of satellite parking pockets, if you will, in the area so that you can get higher densities, which will then in turn produce more affordable units. And I'm not saying subsidized units, I'm just saying there'd be market rate units, but they would be more affordable. And I just would like to know if, from somebody who is in that business, development business, to tell me if that pencils out or not.
I think we're having somebody who's in that business telling us that.
Yeah, but
doesn't pencil.
but the focus, well, he has a self-interest in wanting to develop this property. I mean, I just want more information is all I'm saying. And I just don't think senior housing, subsidized senior housing at this moment in time, when we have very scarce resources of land, and we have these two huge resorts coming into town, I think
They're not huge, they're modestly sized.
I'm sorry, but for Calistoga, they have a lot of employees. That's my point. A lot of employees. Probably 200 employees at each. There's 400 new jobs. How are we going to provide housing for those people?
Can we buy this property with those provisions, or will you not allow us to buy this property with those provisions? You hold the purse strings here. Not the purse strings, but the hammer.
Yeah, we currently own the escrow, so yes, we do have it in escrow. To address that, this is what we've really been analyzing for the last probably 6 months. And again, while I appreciate where Councilman Dunsford is coming, it just doesn't lend itself to this development. And while I do have a self-interest, I do want to develop it, as I indicated to begin with. If I had my choice, I had a blank slate and I had a bigger parcel, it would definitely be family/workforce housing. This parcel just doesn't lend itself to it. And I wish that it did. It just doesn't. So again, how can I do the most good for Calistoga on this parcel and its seniors? The housing that this concept of housing that we're discussing, where we're looking at potentially single room occupancy for workforce, for family. There aren't a lot of funding sources and resources for that sort of housing currently. And so as I come to you tonight, I want to present an option that is feasible. The last thing I want to do is come back to you 2 years from now and say, well, I tried, but I couldn't do it. And this is what, again, is like what I think is the best, and it's also the most feasible. I don't make any money unless I get a development done. That has been the key to our success. We started as a group in 2001. We developed 64 developments. We own them all. We manage them all. And the reason for that is that we're able to choose developments that we can get done and we can complete. So like I said, I extremely sympathize, empathize, completely understand where you're coming from. It's just not feasible here. And again, I wish that it was. So that being said, seniors, I think, is the best for the city, and because it's the best for the city, and because I can get it financed, it then becomes by default best for us.
Is there such a thing as reverse senior housing? You have to be 21 to live there, and you got to be out by the time you're 35. And it's for workforce.
No,
okay.
That doesn't exist, at least that I'm aware of.
Well, let's invent
might
a
be onto
concept.
something.
Yeah, let's invent a concept here.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I think we should take this opportunity. It's an opportunity that is open right now, so for senior housing, and I think we should take it.
All right.
I'm okay with directing this towards senior.
I think
So
I think we can take what we should get.
We're looking, and no bones about it, this is whatever's decided tonight. There's no guarantee that you'll be able to find the funding and this will ever come to fruition, but it's entering into a partnership that is directionally correct. Thank you very much. With that understood, staff is looking for, by motion, some direction in terms of type of housing to pursue with Corporation for Affordable Housing. I will entertain a motion on that, or for workforce/family. Understanding that the density.
I'll make a motion for that we direct this project towards senior housing.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have, got to write that time, a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. Motion carries 4-1. Moving on to the next item, item number 7, consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the City of Calistoga and the Calistoga Professional Firefighters Association, CPFA. Recommended action is to adopt the resolution. You'll notice that the next three items, 7, 8, and 9, are very similar, and these deal with labor negotiations. For the information of those in the audience or those at home, while it may be could possibly appear to be a quick action on our part, you need to know that there have been long discussions for several months getting us to this point of the agreements and discussions, and this is just allowing us to move forward at that point. With that said, City Manager Spittler, can you please move us to item number 7?
Yes, before you is a proposed one-year memorandum of understanding. The MOU with the Firefighters Association expired December 31st. We have been in negotiation about a replacement MOU or an extension. They came to us and proposed what is before you pretty much, a retroactive to January 1st cost of living adjustment of 3%, which approximates the cost of living. They would like a reopener when the compensation and salary adjustment study is accepted by the council, which should be at the next council meeting. So 30 days after that, we would begin negotiations on that. I believe that will take a while because there's a lot to digest and understand. So this MOU would go through the end of this year, calendar year, December 31st. But we would then address the implications of the classification compensation study with the firefighters. The impacts, physical impacts, this is a 3%. We had already built into a budget of like a 2% this year's budget, so the net impact is 1%. That wasn't anticipated. So I am recommending. There's also language dealing with strike team to make sure that they're eligible to get paid when they leave Calistoga, not when they arrive at the incident area. So this has been agreed to by the Firefighters Association. I have their signature, and I'm asking the council to adopt the attached resolution authorizing me to enter into this 1-year MOU.
Thank you. Also, the council has been kept abreast of this situation during negotiations during closed session, which is required during labor negotiations. Council members, any questions on this particular item? Anyone in the public? I'll open for public comment. Not seeing any movement. We will close for public comment, and I will entertain a motion as requested on this item.
I'll make motion we adopt the resolution.
I second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item number 8, very similar, consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the City of Calistoga and the Calistoga Public Employees Association, CPEA. Recommended action is to adopt the resolution. City Manager Spittler, I'm assuming this is identical, only with a different labor group.
Yes, and some minor deals dealing with, or changes dealing with uniforms, but same basic 3% COLA adjustment, an upgrade to the meal situation in terms of how much we would pay for a meal, and also revisit 30 days after the classification compensation study is accepted by the council.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the public? Close it to the public. Any council members with questions, or we'll entertain a motion on this item?
I make a motion that we authorize the city manager to execute the memorandum of understanding between the City of Calistoga and the Calistoga Public Employees Association, CP.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Barnes. We have a second by Councilmember Kraus. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Item number 9, consideration of a resolution changing the salary and labor benefits for unrepresented employees. Recommended action is adopt the resolution. City Manager Spittler.
Yes, this is similar. The unrepresented employees, which are about 12 of them, do not belong to any labor association. So basically they have to, the council decides kind of almost unilaterally what they're going to get. But obviously we try to be fair and equitable. They would also get a 3% retro and have a possibility at my discretion approval up to $150 per month for vehicle use. Basically, they'd have to demonstrate to me that they actually use their private vehicle, city business. Allow provisions for a vacation sellback. This is advantageous to us because we pay present value of unused vacation time as opposed to when they leave employment, they get cashed out at full value. It allows me, at my discretion, should there be money available, to allow people to partially cash in accrued vacation time that they're not going to use. Again, the classification comp study, we would reopen on that 30 days after council accepts it. And everything else is pretty much already in existence with this group. So, recommending.
Thank you. Council members, any questions? Open this to the public. Not seeing every movement. I will close it to the public, bring it back to the council, and entertain a motion on this item as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. We have a second by Councilmember Kraus. Any further questions or commentary? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous as well. Thank you. City Manager Spittler, if you can communicate our thanks and appreciation to these 3 labor groups for their diligence and hard work in getting this, bringing these agreements to fruition, their continued support of the city, that would be most appreciated. Item number 10, consideration of a resolution to repeal resolution number 96-65 and adopt revisions to the Calistoga Personnel Rules and Regulations Manual. The recommended action is to adopt the resolution. Item number 10 will also be directed by City Manager Spittler. And I believe this is the housekeeping.
Well, the personnel manual, which was adopted 93 and 95, with changes, had meal allowance of $6 per meal. And obviously, inflation has eaten that up. So the labor groups asked that we allow, we don't have very many employees that have meals on the city dime. We do have employees that are called in, particularly on the wastewater plant, that work extra hours over the weekend. They're called in and they want a meal. So we've synced up the language to with the government accounting office in terms of a meal allowance for Napa County for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we changed the personnel rules so that that would kick in. I think it's more fair. While I was at it, I noticed that the at-will employees are defined as secretary to the city manager and all department heads, and I would like to strike secretary of the city manager as an at-will employee. That practice hasn't been done in a long time, and I don't think that position needs to be an at-will employee. So while we're at it, I'm asking.
So that person would then go from unrepresented to represented?
No, they're still unrepresented.
Okay.
But they would not serve at my pleasure. They would be a rights employee.
Okay. Incidentally, there's a lot of other areas that personnel manual that I went over 16 years ago that needed revision. I mean, you want to talk about the Napa County having some outdated ordinances, our personnel rules and regulations. If they were enforced the way they're in, they would probably get us into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, thank you. Council members, any questions of city staff? Anyone in the public, any questions? Yes. Please share with us your name and address, should you so choose, and thank you for hanging in with us.
Charlotte Williams, 59 View Road. In regards to the elimination of the city manager secretary from at-will employee list, how does this, or does this have any effect on her performance requirements or long-term status?
Well, basically, there's a job description, and she has to abide by that, and I do annual evaluations on her performance. And if she becomes a rights employee,
he or she,
then and there's a problem, then I have to use progressive discipline counseling to get them back into place. And we do have the ability to terminate an employee if they fail to perform on their job. So they're not there forever. But at will means they serve at my pleasure. So if I decide I don't have to really have a reason, I can say I'm letting you go. And this position basically does clerical assistance, receptionist work for me and the city clerk. And usually an at-will employee is a department head, a high-level position. So I don't see the utility of having it at that level.
Just to clarify, so does this mean then changing that position means there'd be documentation? There'd have to be documentation if someone let go.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
It actually affords them more rights.
It's more protection for the employee.
This protects the employee more.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? All right, bring it back to the council. Any further questions, discussion, or entertain a motion on this matter as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford, a second by Councilmember Kraus. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 11 and the last item. Consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a 2-year lease agreement with the Napa County Fair Association for use of professional office space at 1435 North Oak Street in Calistoga in an amount of $800 per month. The recommended action is to adopt the resolution. I see 2 Fair Board members who have stayed with us the entire night, so I almost feel compelled to make this an issue in some way or another. Just
string it out a little longer.
City Manager Spittler, can you please guide us on this?
Thank you. When the Montenhoff Center was damaged in rain, when we had rain a couple years ago, the recreation offices had to move out of there, and our insurance company's been paying for a temporary modular at Logvy parking lot. It has no plumbing or restroom facilities, so obviously it's not a good situation. And so I began the process of finding someplace else for them. One thought was to be at Logvy, where the Boys and Girls Club wants to go, but we're still working on that as a long-term future plan for them. But we need something that will be where workable for them over the next 2 or 3 years. So I started looking at professional offices in Calistoga, competitive rates, but also the bias would be proximity to Logby Park for obvious reasons. And so I looked at offices in Lower Washington and the price for them, and then look at what used to be the Maxfield Building professional office and what they were charging, and approached fair manager about their using their administrative offices. They were really receptive to that. I went before the fair board, I believe last week or week before last, and they were in agreement with that and authorized the fair manager to enter into an agreement. The figure is $800 a month. I think that's the going rate. That includes all utilities except telephone and internet. I was approached by the broker for the Maxfield property because there's new owners and they were interested. They knew that I was looking for a place, and they gave me a quote on renting out some of their suites. And I think whereas the individual suites are less expensive, but they're much smaller and they're not all co-joined, so that I have an effective use area. And so in effect, I'd pay more for space that it's not as cohesive as the fairgrounds. So I think also the fair board was really interested in having our staffs work together, and some, having benefit of us seeing how each other work and what could come of that future. So being close to Logby Park, I think this would be a good idea. Initially, I would move in without any tenant improvements. If I need to we need to put up separation walls or a different entry, that would be at our expense. But right now, initially, I'm trying to get in the door where they have plenty of room for desks, actually have a kitchen, restrooms. So,
Thank you. Council members, any questions? We've spoken about this before. I feel very strongly, and first, I appreciate what the Napa County Fair Board and Association have offered us, and would like us, my position is we approve it, but I feel very strongly that there has to be divided space. I think it leads to customer, in our case residents, confusion. There needs to be adequate signage, separate entrance. I'm very familiar with the space. There's a lot of activity that goes on over there, especially as they get ramped up for events and activities, which they intend to do more of. So I would strongly recommend and support quickly getting tenant improvements, which I understand will be on our dime, to clearly differentiate space.
I kind of disagree with that. I would like to get them in there and see how it works. I have talked about this issue with the fair manager and quite aware of, but there would be significant improvements to have a separate access, and I want to just see how it works. And if it doesn't work, then yes, I would do that. The agreement provides for us to take on it at our expense.
I'm also concerned about confusion of mission between what they do, what we do, and what kind of confusion that creates. So I'm perfectly willing to wait it out a little bit, but I think what you're going to find, again, having had experience over there, all the hard work that they do, I think you're going to find that you're going to need to make improvements sooner than. With that said, any other questions? I'll open this to the public. Nope, close it to the public. Anyone like to make a motion on this item?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Barnes. We have a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez Ortega, would you like to please adjourn this meeting in honor of?
Yes, I want to adjourn this meeting in honor of Mr. Jaime Rubio, who lost his life a week ago. He was a great leader.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.